Okay, everyone, here is the second hearing of Pam Bondi testifying in front of the United States Congress on Jeffrey Epstein-related topics. Now, you may remember the first time she did this, she was very combative in front of the Senate. But this time, she's in front of the House, and they were prepared for her. They had a lot of questions and a lot of comebacks, and they even addressed her insult book. It's a wild hearing, and she becomes very frustrated at times. She lashes out at times. It's probably one of the craziest hearings I've ever seen on Capitol Hill, and it seems to me like she may have possibly lied under oath, and this would not be the first time her or Kash Patel from this administration have lied in their hearings related to Jeffrey Epstein. So I think this is becoming a very serious situation. I think you can kind of see in her face, it's setting in on her how much trouble she's going to be in and how much the whole country has turned on her and the Trump administration. Either way, this is a fascinating hearing. I hope you guys will watch it. Enjoy. Here's the video.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We begin with opening statements. The chair is now recognized. 18 cities, 11 states, 3 counties, and the District of Columbia are sanctuary jurisdictions, accounting for 31% of the population in this country. 31% of the American people, almost 1/3 of the American people, live in a city, county, or state where the left-wing leadership tells local law enforcement not to work with federal law enforcement. Now, what does that mean in practice? Let's look at Abraham Gonzalez, who on September 20th, 2023, was arrested by Border Patrol for illegally entering the United States. And of course, the Biden administration released him into the country. 5 months later, February 26, 2024, Mr. Gonzalez is charged with assault. 2 weeks later, March 11, 2024, he's charged with felony motor vehicle theft, stole a car. And on March 20th, 2024, 9 days later, he's arrested by the Denver police and placed in the Denver Justice Center. 6 days later, March 22nd, 2024, ICE sends a detainer notice to the Denver Justice Center saying this: if you're going to release Mr. Gonzalez, can you give us a heads up? Can you let us know maybe 48 hours before you're going to release this guy so we can come apprehend him there at the jail? And remember, a detainer is a final order of removal from a court where this individual or this individual's committed some removable offense. But on February 28th, 2025, Abraham Gonzalez is released to the streets. In fact, we can put that up. I think you can see this. Released, we got the form from the Denver Justice Center. What kind of inmate was Mr. Gonzalez for those 345 days that he was in the Denver Justice Center? We have that too. Violent to the staff, keep separate. So this guy was so bad, you had to keep him away from other inmates. He'd already assaulted some staff member. Denver released this guy to the streets and instead of turning him over to ICE agents who would have come to the jail and arrested him there. And of course, we all know what happens. When the officers did apprehend Mr. Gonzalez out on the street, he assaulted one of the officers. This is what happens when you have a sanctuary jurisdiction. Right now in Minnesota, there are 1,360 detainer notices for violent offenders. Governor Walz and others have released 470 criminal illegal aliens back to the streets. In New York State, it's 7,000. Nationwide, it's over 17,000 that we know of. Where a detainer was filed, since President Trump's been in office, over 17,000 times a detainer was filed, and those individuals were released to the streets instead of turned over to federal law enforcement. 17,864 times. Illegals who've been charged with the crime have been released to the streets, and thereby jeopardizing the safety of the public, the safety of law enforcement, and of course the migrant themselves. And frankly, helping create the environment that results in the tragic deaths like we saw with Miss Good and Mr. Preddy. A few years ago, Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders said this in response to the State of the Union address. She said, "The divide in America today is normal versus crazy." And it's true, because it's crazy not to have a border, which is what we had under the previous administration. It's crazy to abolish ICE, and it's crazy to release bad guys who are here illegally to the streets when with one phone call, federal law enforcement will come to the jail and pick them up. The mindset that says it's okay to release these guys is the same left-wing mindset that thinks it's okay to weaponize government against your political opponents. And that is exactly what we had in the previous Justice Department. The Biden-Harris Department of Justice called parents domestic terrorists. The Biden-Harris Justice Department used FBI SWAT teams to arrest pro-life advocates. The Biden-Harris DOJ targeted traditional Catholics. The Biden-Harris DOJ pressured social media companies to censor Americans, and the Biden-Harris Justice Department launched not one, but 2 investigations into President Trump, spending over $35 million to try to bring down their political opponent. To further this effort, they sought the phone records of over a dozen Republican members of Congress. Even the Democrats said this was wrong. They got bank records for scores of White House officials. They even paid at least one confidential human source $20,000 for information on President Trump. And of course, while doing all this, they couldn't tell us who planted the pipe bombs, who leaked the Dobbs opinion, and who put cocaine in the White House. But thank goodness the American people saw through it all. Americans were tired of being targeted for their beliefs, tired of the lawfare, tired of the rampant crime throughout this country, and that's why they overwhelmingly elected President Trump. And what a difference a year makes. What a difference a year makes. Under Attorney General Bondi, the DOJ has returned to its core missions, upholding the rule of law, going after the bad guys, and keeping Americans safe. The Trump Justice Department has restored the rule of law. Murders are down nationwide by 20%. In D.C., violent crime is down by 28%. The federal surge in D.C. resulted in 8,000 arrests, the seizure of 800 illegal guns, and the recovery of 16 missing kids. The Trump Justice Department apprehended a suspect in the pipe bomb investigation, and they've arrested 6 of the FBI's top 10 most wanted fugitives in just 1 year. Of course, they arrested narco-terrorist Nicolas Maduro, and they seized a record number of drugs flowing into this country. Trump Justice Department put an end to targeting Americans for their beliefs. Attorney General Bondi rescinded Attorney General Garland's anti-parent memorandum. Department of Justice ended the practices of using the FACE Act to target pro-life Americans. They've refused to tolerate attacks on places of worship and investigations of traditional Catholics that we saw in the previous administration. On her first day, Attorney General Bondi disbanded the Foreign Influence Task Force that was pressuring social media companies to censor Americans. And the Trump Justice Department has ended lawfare. Under Attorney General Bondi, along with Director Patel, they've worked to expose the political nature of Arctic Frost and the Jack Smith investigations. They've turned over hundreds of pages of documents to Congress, and that's why we know, for example, that Mr. Smith paid at least $20,000 to some confidential human source. That's why we know that Jack Smith knew it was unconstitutional to seek to toll records from members. But since the litigation risk was low, and because members would never find out about the subpoena until years later, they charged ahead and violated the Constitution. The Trump Justice Department has changed DOJ policy to require prosecutors to tell judges if NDOs relate to members of the separate and equal branch of government, the Congress. And to top it all off, the Trump Justice Department opened an investigation into the conspiracy behind the Russia collusion hoax. The Justice Department has put common sense ahead of politics. They sued to keep boys out of girls' sports. They secured deals with universities to stop race-based admissions and anti-Semitic practices. And after discovering rampant fraud in Minnesota, the Justice Department, under the leadership of Attorney General Bondi, has established a new National Fraud Division. In fact, I met with Colin McDonald, who will head that division last week. I think he's going to do a great job. There's a lot of work to be done in that area, but I want to thank the Attorney General for her great work in the first year on the job, and I want to thank you for being here. With that, I would yield to the ranking member for an opening statement.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman, and welcome, Attorney General Bondi. You've got the best lawyer's job in America because your mission is justice and your clients are the American people. But to promote justice for the people, you've got to listen to the victims, like the women seated behind you today. Those are just some of the hundreds of survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's global sex trafficking ring who are demanding that the truth be told and are demanding accountability for the abusers who trafficked and raped them. You still haven't met with these survivors. So with their permission, let me introduce to you the survivors and late survivors' family members who are present today. There's Teresa Helm, there's Jess Michaels, Laura Bloom McGee, Danny Bensky, Liz Stein, Marina Lacerda, Sky and Amanda Roberts, who are the family of the late Virginia Giuffre, Charlene Richard, and Lisa Phillips. Now, you're not showing a lot of interest in the victims, Madam Attorney General, whether it's Epstein's human trafficking ring or the homicidal governmental violence against citizens in Minneapolis. As Attorney General, you're siding with the perpetrators and you're ignoring the victims. That will be your legacy unless you act quickly to change course. You're running a massive Epstein cover-up right out of the Department of Justice. You've been ordered by subpoena and by Congress to turn over 6 million documents, photographs, and videos in the Epstein files, but you've turned over only 3 million. You say you're not turning over the other 3 million because they're somehow duplicative, but we know that there are actual memos of victim statements in there, and you also took down the Department of Justice's prosecution memo from 2019. So it's clearly not all duplicative, but even if it were, why not release it? Just release all the duplicative stuff. In the half you did produce, you redacted the names of abusers, enablers, accomplices, and co-conspirators, apparently to spare them embarrassment and disgrace, which is the exact opposite of what the law ordered you to do. Even worse, you shockingly failed to redact many of the victims' names, which is what you were ordered to do by Congress. Some of the victims had come forward publicly, but many had not. Many had kept their torment private, even from family and friends, but you published their names, their identities, their images on thousands of pages for the world to see. So you ignored the law, and even with over 100,000 employees at your disposal, you acted with some mixture of staggering incompetence, cold indifference, and jaded cruelty towards more than 1,000 victims raped, abused, and trafficked. This performance screams cover-up. Convicted sex trafficker and groomer Ghislaine Maxwell opened the gates of hell to Virginia Giuffre and hundreds of other victims, as Virginia recorded in her remarkable book, Nobody's Girl. But when Maxwell was subpoenaed to come testify before Congress, you and Todd Blanche quickly moved her from a higher security prison to a minimum security camp in Texas, where she's enjoyed 5-star treatment, including catered meals, private gym time, and access to a therapy puppy. All because Todd Blanche, who's utterly failed to investigate the monstrous crimes of Epstein and Maxwell's co-conspirators, spent 9 hours with Maxwell and satisfied himself that she would have nothing untoward to say about Donald Trump, which is your only real interest in the matter, based on institutional performance. But abandoning victims and coddling perpetrators is what you do best. When the FBI opened a criminal investigation into the brutal killing in Minneapolis of Renee Good, a poet and 37-year-old mother of 3, by Trump's masked paramilitary ICE agents, you shut it down. You claim you're investigating the cold-blooded murder of Alex Preddy, an ICU nurse at the VA. But how can we trust the administration when the president and Kristi Noem called Preddy a domestic terrorist and Stephen Miller called him a would-be assassin? Not only do you refuse to share evidence with the state and local investigators and prosecutors in Minnesota, you have blocked their access to the crime scene and the evidence. How are you seeking justice for Marimar Martinez, the Montessori school teacher in Chicago who was shot 5 times by a Border Patrol agent who bragged about it on text? Or the family of Keith Porter, a father of 2 shot and killed by an off-duty ICE agent in LA? Or the family of Silverio Villegas Gonzalez, shot and killed in Illinois minutes after he dropped his kids off at school? There's no sign of any movement at the Department of Justice. You even launched a criminal investigation into Renee Good's grieving widow. How sick is that? But it's even worse. You've turned the People's Department of Justice into Trump's instrument of revenge. Trump orders up prosecutions like pizza, and you deliver every time. He tells you to go after James Comey, Letitia James, Lisa Cook, and Jerome Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve Board, and members of Congress like Adam Schiff, Mark Kelly, Alyssa Slotkin, Chrissy Houlihan, Jason Crow, Chris Deluzio, and Maggie Goodlander, to name a few, and you snap to it. You replace real prosecutors with counterfeit stooges who robotically do the president's bidding. Nothing in American history comes close to this complete corruption of the justice function and contamination of federal law enforcement. And the good news is many serious lawyers at DOJ, including some of your own original appointees, have refused your lawless orders. Danielle Sassoon, your original pick for acting U.S. Attorney in Manhattan, resigned rather than follow your corrupt order to quash an indictment against Mayor Eric Adams as a political favor from Donald Trump. A Federalist Society member who clerked for Justice Scalia, U.S. Attorney Sassoon refused to participate in this blatantly corrupt scheme. Her top assistant, Hagan Scotton, an Iraqi war vet and two-time Bronze Star recipient who clerked for Chief Justice Roberts, and then Judge Kavanaugh, promptly resigned too, writing to your office, quote, "I expect you will eventually find someone who is enough of a fool or enough of a coward to file your motion, but it was never going to be me." You and the president nominated Eric Siebert, a 15-year career prosecutor, to be your U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia. But after 5 months of investigating Letitia James and James Comey, he found no evidence to justify criminal charges. So you forced him out. You replaced him with Lindsay Halligan, Trump's personal lawyer from the Mar-a-Lago documents case, who had zero prosecutorial experience and no qualifications. And then you were humiliated when a federal judge found that this corrupt appointment was blatantly unlawful and threw out Halligan's indictments entirely. And grand juries of American citizens have repeatedly rejected your vendettas and baseless indictments brought by the hacks left at DOJ now, with 2 different grand juries in Virginia voting down indictments against Letitia James in a single week. And just yesterday, another grand jury shut down your vendetta factory by rejecting indictments against the 6 members of Congress who had spoken out to remind all service members that they have a duty to refuse illegal orders. You tried to get a grand jury to indict 6 members of Congress who were veterans of our armed forces on charges of seditious conspiracy simply for exercising their First Amendment rights. I hope you will heed the wisdom and the constitutional patriotism of those grand jurors and not try it again by doubling down on that humiliation. As your best lawyers are sacked for having participated in the January 6th case or just flee for the exits now, your new lawyers keep lying in court. In dozens of cases, they've been excoriated for lying to federal judges. Chief Judge Boasberg, right here in D.C., suggested your Department of Justice perpetrated a fraud on the court. Other judges found your statements to be, quote, inexplicably misleading, patently incredible, totally inconsistent, and so disingenuous that the court is left with little confidence that the government can be trusted to tell the truth about anything. Now, as ranking member, I asked the chairman to add a few extra rounds of questions today because we each have 5 hours of questions, not 5 minutes, but we're stuck with 5 minutes. That's clearly insufficient to give voice to America's victims and survivors and to demand answers about all the corruption and cover-ups that we see at DOJ right now. We've got just 1 round, so we ask you politely but firmly, Madam Attorney General, please do not waste 1 second of our precious time by evading questions, by changing the subject, or engaging in personal attacks against members of Congress. We saw your performance in the Senate, and we're not going to accept that. This isn't a game. In the Senate, you brought something with you called a burn book, a binder of smears to attack members personally for doing the people's work of oversight. Please set the burn book aside and answer our questions. And when you hear us reclaim our time, that means it's time for you to stop speaking. We only have 5 minutes, so when we reclaim our time, that means you stop. And if you don't, we will ask the chair to stop the clock and let you go on his time. The quality of justice in America depends on the character of our government. Please do your job and bring the Department of Justice back from the brink. The survivors seated behind you and the American people watching everywhere deserve a Department of Justice worthy of its name. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection, all of the opening statements will be included in the record. We will now introduce today's witness. The Honorable Pamela J. Bondi has served as the Attorney General of the United States since February 5th, 2025. She previously served in the Office of the White House Counsel, 2 terms as the Florida Attorney General, and spent more than 18 years as a prosecutor. We welcome our witness and thank her for appearing today. We will begin by swearing you in. Would you please rise and raise your right hand Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, so help you God?
I do.
Let the record show that the witness has answered in the affirmative. Thank you. You can be seated. And please know that your written testimony will be entered into the record in its entirety. Accordingly, we ask that you summarize your testimony. Madam Attorney General, you may begin.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Raskin, and distinguished members of this committee. Thank you for hosting me here today. I'm grateful for the opportunity to answer your questions, highlight the work of our department, and discuss the most important topic of all, keeping the American people safe. A little over a year ago, I was sworn into office as the 87th Attorney General of the United States. I came into office with the goal of refocusing the Department of Justice on its core mission after years of bloated bureaucracy and political weaponization. The Department of Justice's core mission is to fight violent crime, protect the American people, and defend the rule of law above all else. While our work is never done, we have made tremendous progress to make America safe again. In 2025, we saw the lowest murder rate in 125 years. That's nothing short of historic. If you compare 25 to 24, here's what you'll find. The murder rate is down 21%, robbery down 23%, carjacking down 43%, gun assault down 22%, ag assault, burglary, could go on and on. Crime is declining. This did not happen by accident. The numbers tell an important yet straightforward story. President Trump has given us the resources, the support, and the leadership to protect the American people. President Trump's policies have saved lives. I cannot think of a policy outcome more important than protecting the lives of American citizens. Can you? This trend has been especially clear in Washington, D.C. and in Memphis. These are two iconic American cities that spent years in the grip of horrific violent crime. The Department of Justice surged law enforcement resources, and the results came quickly. Crime plummeted in both cities. And I want to make one point loud and clear. We achieved those results by working with Democratic mayors. Public safety does not have a party registration. When your constituents call 911, they don't ask for political views of the responding officer. They ask for help. I have federal agents in each and every one of your districts. They're here to help, and I am here to help. Many cities and states have worked with us and taken advantage of our federal support. Some have not. Meanwhile, a few elected officials have declared that they are, quote, at war with the federal government and encouraged widespread obstruction of law enforcement. This has resulted in avoidable clashes on the streets, as you've all seen. We've seen rioters storming a Christian church. Citizens and law enforcement officers have both been endangered by reckless rhetoric. We have made dozens of arrests in and around Minneapolis so far, and many of them could have been avoided by simple compliance with federal law. Of course, our efforts reach beyond our urban centers. We are striking crucial blows against terrorist organizations such as MS-13, TDA, the Sinaloa Cartel, and Antifa. And as we sit here, I think you've seen the news this morning. The news is reporting that cartel drones are being shot down by our military. That's what we all should care about right now, protecting America. As we seek to dismantle these drug trafficking networks that poison Americans, in 2025, our DEA agents seized more than 47 million fentanyl pills and more than 9,800 total kilos of fentanyl. That represents 369 million potentially deadly doses that can kill Americans. Meanwhile, our attorneys are fighting for President Trump's agenda in courtrooms across this country. This administration has been sued 627 times. We fought through a nonstop flood of bad faith temporary restraining orders from liberal activist judges across this country. America has never seen this level of coordinated judicial opposition towards a presidential administration. It is not only an unlawful attack on the executive branch's authority, but a serious attack on the democratic process. In spite of this unprecedented judicial activism, we've attained 24 favorable rulings at the U.S. Supreme Court, their emergency docket, and even more to come. We've done so while ending the weaponization of the prior administration by dropping FACE Act prosecutions, exposing the Arctic frost scandal via congressional disclosure, thank you, Chairman, and restoring one tier of justice in this country. To address the Epstein files, more than 500 attorneys and reviewers spent thousands of hours painstakingly reviewing millions of pages to comply with Congress's law. We've released more than 3 million pages, including 180,000 images, all to the public, while doing our very best in the time frame allotted by the legislation to protect victims. And if you brought us a victim's name that was inadvertently released, we immediately redacted it. All members of Congress, as you know, are invited to visit DOJ to see for yourselves. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the Epstein survivors who are here today. I'm a career prosecutor, and despite what the ranking member said, I have spent my entire career fighting for victims, and I will continue to do so. I am deeply sorry for what any victim has been through, especially as a result of that monster. If you have any information to share with law enforcement about anyone who has hurt you or abused you, the FBI is waiting to hear from you. I want you to know that any accusations of criminal wrongdoing will be taken seriously and investigated. The Department of Justice is committed to holding criminals accountable to the fullest extent of the law. In 2025, the FBI arrested over 1,700 child predators, a 10% increase from 2024. We also located 2,700 victims of child exploitation and shut down 3.8 million dark web pedophile accounts. 3.8 million. So please, if you have information to share that needs to be investigated, contact the FBI. Today, I look forward to discussing further our shared obligation to protect the American people, uphold the rule of law, and keep this nation safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Attorney General. The chair we now proceed under the 5-minute rule. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam General, thank you for your extensive remarks, particularly on your continued investigation of those responsible over the years in the Epstein debacle. Obviously, you have an amazingly full docket between civil rights, between criminal, between so-called white-collar crime, and doing so, as the chairman said, at a time in which both you and the president are under attack, and our ICE agents and FBI and others are under attack when they try to enforce the law. I personally want to apologize for those who would embolden, support, or even stand with those lawbreakers that sit on this and other daises here in Congress. My job generally is to talk about patents and trademarks, as the the chairman of that subcommittee. I'll forego that today because one of my other jobs is the creation and maintenance of Article III judges, and I work with the Chief Justice on that, and we're trying to expand the court. But currently, there are only 677 district court judges. They have very full dockets as well. But you create a tremendous amount of judges, particularly immigration judges. You do so in order to save the court that, but adjudicate, as is requirement, each of those people who claim a right to be here in the United States. And that has been going on under Republican and Democratic administrations for years. What's unique about the Trump administration this time is that you and President Trump have managed to reduce the backlog of people seeking that for the first time in decades. You are getting ahead of that tremendous backlog that caused, for better or worse, the release of millions of people with little pieces of paper saying, come back later when we call you, and often to no avail when you call. So I want to congratulate you on that because it's an accomplishment you might not take credit for and the other side would never give you credit for. But I hope you can continue to do that and do more. And I say so for a reason, because much of this hearing will be about Minneapolis and other places in which the backlog of criminal aliens, including in my home state of California, people who have hurt other people, people who have victimized their communities, is extensive. And although the overall number through adjudication may be going on, because of places like my home state, California, you're unable to apprehend people that my sheriffs want apprehended. They desperately want to cooperate, and they're prohibited by law. It is this committee's opinion on this side of the aisle that, in fact, you should be given the ability to demand that participation, and that the release of a known criminal not be considered to be acceptable just because a state or city has declared itself a sanctuary. I want you to opine on just one thing that I think has been misunderstood. As I said earlier, you create and maintain those judges that adjudicate these cases. You also support so many that, in fact, have to make decisions as judges. Knowing that this limitation of so few Article III judges are there, please educate those who seem to miss the point that Article I judges, including bankruptcy judges, including immigration judges, including lots of people with the title appropriately judge, do in fact issue documents that look like, act like, and are normally accepted as warrants, as subpoenas, as demands for state officials to stand aside and allow the production of either an individual or documents. Because I think people are missing the point that these ICE retainers and detainers and so on, they act like they're nothing when in fact in the ordinary course, Madam General, you do in fact have Article I judges constantly putting those out, and they are respected normally.
Thank you, Congressman, for talking about all the great judges. And if I could add one thing to that, we are always recruiting and looking for judges. So please reach out to our office for these judges who are handling all these very important matters. We've even added some JAG officers as immigration judges.
Thank you.
And so we're continuing to do that, but we're always seeking qualified lawyers as well to be part of that. And thank you for highlighting that, Congressman.
Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Attorney General Bondi, right here. We are joined in this room by some of the thousands of survivors from Jeffrey Epstein's horrific sex trafficking ring. They have shown such incredible courage in speaking out, in demanding accountability to bring the predators and pedophiles to justice. The Epstein Files Transparency Act required your Department of Justice to disclose the perpetrators connected with Epstein's criminal activities and to redact the information of survivors to protect their identities. Let me show you what actually happened. First, in violation of the law, your department has shown a pattern of redacting the names of powerful predators. Here behind me is one example of an email from Epstein to a man whose name was redacted. The email reads, quote, "Where are you? Are you okay? I loved the torture video." Only after members of Congress demanded that we see the unredacted files did the world learn the name of this individual, Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, the chairman and CEO of a company that had financial ties to President Trump's business and personal ties to Trump's advisor, Steve Bannon. Second, the survivors were not similarly protected, also in violation of the law. Here is another email titled Epstein Victim List. We have blurred the names of the survivors for their protection, but your Department of Justice initially released this list of 32 survivors' names with only one name redacted, along with numerous files that disclose not only the names, the emails, and the addresses of survivors, but also nude photographs and even the identities of Jane Does who had been protected for decades until your department released their names. Survivors are now telling us that their families are finding out for the first time that they were trafficked by Epstein. In their words, quote, "This release does not provide closure. It feels like a deliberate attempt to intimidate survivors, punish those who came forward, and reinforce the same culture of secrecy that allowed Epstein's crimes to continue for decades." To the survivors in the room, if you are willing, please stand. And if you are willing, please raise your hands if you have still not been able to meet with this Department of Justice. Please know for the record that every single survivor has raised their hand. Attorney General Bondi, you apologized to the survivors in your opening statement for what they went through at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein. Will you turn to them now and apologize for what your Department of Justice has put them through with the absolutely unacceptable release of the Epstein files and their information?
Congresswoman, you sat before, Merrick Garland sat in this chair twice.
Attorney General Bondi,
No, can I finish my answer?
No, I'm going to reclaim my time because I asked you a specific question that I would like you to answer, which is, will you turn to the survivors? This is not about anybody that came before you. It is about you taking responsibility for your Department of Justice and the harm that it has done to the survivors who are standing right behind you and are waiting for you to turn to them and apologize for what your Department of Justice has done.
Members get to ask the questions, the witness gets to answer in the way they want to answer. The Attorney General can
That's
respond.
not accurate, Mr. Chairman.
Because she doesn't like the
my
answer.
time.
So,
Mr. Chairman,
why
I have asked
didn't she ask Merrick Garland this?
I am
Twice,
reclaiming
when
my
he sat in my
time, and
chair.
when I
will
reclaim my
continue to
time,
answer.
it is
Mr. Chairman, the
my
gentlelady's
time.
reclaimed
I'm
her
not going
time.
to get in the gutter for her theatrics.
The time belongs to the gentlelady. The gentlelady has 17 seconds.
Thank you. You're not going to answer this question, so let me just
Chairman,
say
I'll
this.
direct it to
What a
you.
massive
No, I'm
cover-up.
answering a
Mr.
question.
Chairman, will you restore her time? The witness is
I'm not going to get in
interrupted.
the gutter with this woman.
Stop the
She's
time
doing
and
theatrics.
let me have my time.
The gentlelady from Washington controls the time. The gentlelady has 17 seconds. You can proceed with your final
Thank you.
17 seconds.
What a massive cover-up this has been and continues to be. Donald Trump made the release of the Epstein files the center of his political campaign because he thought it would benefit him. Then you got into office, Attorney General, claimed to have a client list, only
Regular
to
order.
then say that there was no list. Your deputy, Todd Blanche, met alone with Ghislaine Maxwell and transferred her to a minimum security prison. And now you continue the cover-up. And I wish that you would turn around to the survivors who are standing right behind you and on a human level,
Chairman,
apologize
The chair now recognizes the chair.
and what you have done.
The time of the gentlelady
yield
expired.
back.
The gentlelady, you have no time to yield back. We
Theatrics.
appreciate that. We appreciate the thought. And I would argue the central issue in the last election, the presidential election, was securing the border. The gentleman from Arizona who knows something about securing the border is up for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Attorney General Bondi, for being here today. In 2022, Lafarge, which is a French cement company, pled guilty in U.S. federal court to participating in a criminal conspiracy with ISIS. That conspiracy contributed to the deaths of U.S. service members fighting in Syria during Operation Inherent Resolve. As part of the plea agreement, Lafarge was required to pay more than $775 million to DOJ's Asset Forfeiture Fund. In February 2025, my colleagues and I sent you a letter urging the department to review the petitions for remission submitted by the families of those fallen service members, including several of my constituents. The previous administration ignored these victims and our requests and left their petitions unresolved. My question for you on this particular issue is if you're willing to work to ensure those families that their petitions will be reviewed and brought to a resolution.
Congressman, we are aware of that, and we're committed to doing everything we can to support the victims and work with you. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, appreciate your answer. And now let's go to something that is also pressing that I've been working on for years, and this is the FISA Section 702 and Arctic frost. In January 2025, you testified before the U.S. Senate and agreed with Senator Lee that, quote, anytime an American citizen's private communications are intercepted or stored, whether through incidental collection or otherwise, those communications should not be searched without some showing of probable cause, close quote. You still hold that view today, I assume?
Yes.
And during the most recent FISA reauthorization, I offered an amendment to establish a clear warrant requirement for searches of Americans' data while preserving every publicly cited operational exception, including emergencies, defensive queries, cybersecurity threats. And my intent was to ensure the Department of Justice could continue to keep Americans safe while also ending warrantless searches of U.S. persons' data. Are there any additional circumstances or exceptions that you believe must be included to ensure DOJ can continue to operate effectively while still protecting American citizens' data and privacy?
Yeah, Congressman, we are committed to working with Congress to uncover weaponization and other misconduct by Jack Smith, by others, Arctic frost, everything that happened under the past administration. And we are committed to working with you on that. And we are working with Chairman Jordan, with the House Intel, with all of my fellow cabinet members on resolving that issue.
Well, thank you. And I'm glad you brought up Arctic frost because Section 702 was used in the Arctic frost investigation.
It was.
And information derived was used by Special Counsel Jack Smith. And my question has always been, and no one's been able to answer this, is what was the legal predicate for using a foreign intelligence authority in the Arctic frost investigation? Have you been able to ascertain any legal predicate?
Congressman, what I can tell you today is that has been referred to my office. I can't discuss anything regarding that because it is very active and ongoing.
And you probably can't answer this one either, but I really want to know if Section 702 queries related to that matter involved members of Congress, which we know at some level it did, congressional staff, which we know at some level did. We've heard that journalists or other U.S. persons not suspecting of acting as foreign agents were also caught up in that. Can you answer that question and say whether queries did cover all those groups I just identified?
It is a very active pending investigation within my office. However, I believe many members of Congress have stated that their phones were were part of Arctic frost. We are well aware of that, and we are taking this very seriously, and this is a very active investigation. And I would keep going and say, if any member of the Democrat Party, if any of them, if that had happened to them, we would take that just as serious as we do. And they should be jumping up and down, screaming, supporting you and what you want to do, because this should be a bipartisan issue.
Well, I hope it is a bipartisan issue. You know, I'll just leave with these last couple of questions, which I'm sure fall into the same investigation privilege. But that's this: how many such queries were actually conducted overall? This is outside Arctic frost in the prior year by the FBI or other intelligence community. And particularly, we really need to know what were the legal standards applied? Did they use probable cause? Did they use reasonable articulable suspicion? Or did they have no individualized suspicion and just were gathering up information? And that's beyond the investigation with regarding Arctic frost. I don't expect you to have that information today, but if you can help get that information so we can understand the extensive nature of this continued misuse of 702, it would be very particularly helpful.
And it was extensive. Yes, Congressman. Thank you.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
I have a UC, Mr. Chairman.
And that is the gentlelady from Texas.
I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record. El Paso airspace reopened after FAA quickly rescinds 10-day flights restriction. This was published by the Texas Tribune on February 11th, 2026, and it says it was because of an impasse with the DOD over the use of unmanned military aircraft and not triggered by Mexican cartel drones.
Without objection.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I didn't hear back about the second round of questions. I assume that's not happening. I just want to be able to assure the members, certainly on my side, if not both sides.
That's not a point of order.
No, that every member will get 5 minutes with the witness. Will there be 5 minutes for each?
Yeah, you get 5 minutes. Yeah.
With the witness. Okay,
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah. Okay. And are you up next? Gentleman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I want to begin by acknowledging the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's horrific abuse who are in the room with us today. I want to thank all of you for your bravery in speaking out. And I want to say that you and the other survivors of these heinous crimes deserve better from this Department of Justice. In particular, it is shocking that the department did not redact the names of Epstein's victims, but it did redact the names of their abusers. I don't know whether this was done out of incompetence or whether it was deliberate and malicious. But either way, it is completely unacceptable. Even more troubling, the DOJ has failed to bring any of these perpetrators to justice. Instead, it has engaged in a relentless pursuit of Donald Trump's perceived enemies. I want to focus on just one example. The Attorney General of my home state of New York, Tish James. This DOJ has been hell-bent on securing an indictment against Ms. James for something, anything, simply because she held Donald Trump's companies accountable for years of financial fraud. And indeed, the department manufactured an investigation against her for alleged, quote, mortgage fraud. But the U.S. attorney leading the investigation, Eric Siebert, a Trump appointee, refused to bring charges against Ms. James because there was simply no evidence. Unfortunately, a prosecutor who refuses to do Trump's bidding has no place in this DOJ, so Mr. Siebert was forced out. Trump could not contain his fury that he expressed to you in a social media post addressed to you by name. I'm sure you've seen it. Quote, I fired him and there is a great case, he wrote to you about Mr. Siebert. Then we moved down. We can't delay any longer. It's killing our reputation and credibility. They impeached me twice and indicted me 5 times over nothing. Justice must be served now. And obviously, you followed that order. Lindsay Halligan, Trump's former defense lawyer who had never prosecuted a case in her life, was installed to replace Mr. Siebert, and it was clear that part of her mandate was to go after Ms. James. Halligan immediately sought an indictment, which a court dismissed because Halligan was illegally put into the role. But your department was undeterred, and not once, but twice, it tried to indict Attorney General James in separate courts. Both grand juries rejected you and refused to indict her. It is practically unheard of for a grand jury to refuse an indictment. In 2016, it happened in just 6 cases out of over 150,000 offenses.
And you had it happen twice in the same week, in 2 different courts. That must have been humiliating. And now there are reports that you are continuing to investigate her. The amount of resources that have gone into targeting Attorney General James, months of investigations, multiple failed indictments, is astounding. Since your own prosecutors told you that there is not enough evidence to support a conviction, it's clear that you were going after her simply because she held President Trump accountable and he wants to punish her. And she is just one name on a long list of Trump political enemies that DOJ is reportedly targeting, from Jerome Powell and Lisa Cook at the Federal Reserve to James Comey, numerous Democratic members of Congress, John Brennan, Jack Smith, Democratic officials in Minnesota, Chris Krebs, Miles Taylors, and more. And those are just the ones we know about. In contrast to these politically motivated investigations, grasping at something they can charge their enemies with, we now have concrete evidence of disgusting criminality revealed in the Epstein files. So I really have just one question for you. How many of Epstein's co-conspirators have you indicted? How many perpetrators are you even investigating?
First, you showed it. I find it.
How many have you indicted?
Excuse me. I'm going to answer the question.
Answer my question.
No, I'm going to answer the question the way I want to answer the question.
No,
Your
you're going to answer the
theatrics are
question
ridiculous.
the way I asked it.
Chairman Jordan, I'm not going to get in the gutter with these people, but I'm going to answer the question.
How many have you indicted?
Again, the time belongs to
Reclaiming my time.
the time belongs.
I think it's very interesting.
Reclaiming my time.
I think it's very
Reclaiming my
interesting.
time.
You can
When
reclaim
he
your
talks
time,
about they
reclaiming my time,
indicted,
Mr.
the
Chairman.
president said they
Close the
indicted
clock.
him
Mr.
twice.
Mr. Chairman, please
They
stop the
sure
clock
did.
and
And
stop
he
the clock and
indicted-
restore his time.
Okay, here we go with these
Committee will be in order.
theatrics.
The time
Reclaiming my
belongs
time
to the
and
gentleman
build
from
back
New
the clock,
York.
please.
We will give you a few more seconds. We will do that. But when
Reclaiming
you
my-
ask a question, the
The
witness
question
gets to
was-
answer. You may not like the answer, but she
Right.
gets to
The
answer.
question was, how many of Epstein's...
They don't like
What?
the answer,
Reclaiming
Chairman,
my time.
because it's honest.
Reclaiming
So
my-
he asked a
Reclaiming my
4-minute
time.
question.
Restore 45
and
seconds to
I am
Mr. Nadler,
going
please,
to
Mr. Chairman.
Reclaiming my
answer.
time.
I mean, you can let her filibuster all day long, but not on our watch.
Reclaiming-
Not on our time. No way.
Reclaiming-
And I told you about that, Attorney General, before you
You
started.
don't tell me
Yeah, oh, I
anything,
did tell you because we
washed
saw
up
what you did in the
loser
Senate.
Lawyer, not even a lawyer.
Committee will be in order.
Time, and I should get back at least 45 seconds.
We will give you a few more seconds. I
Not a
said that
few more,
already.
45 seconds.
Okay, I'm timing right now, Mr. Nadler. Go
All
ahead.
right.
Reclaiming my time. The answer to my question, how many of Epstein's co-conspirators has she indicted, is 0. You have been the Attorney General for a whole year, and your DOJ fired the lead prosecutor of this case, sat on evidence this entire time, and claimed falsely last July that there were no more leads. It took an act of Congress for you to finally release part of the Epstein files, and when you did, you included personal information about the victims while protecting the names of abusers.
Time of the gentleman
None of
has
the perpetrators
expired.
have been brought to justice, but enormous resources
Time
have been
of the
dedicated
gentleman
to
has
pursuing Trump's
expired,
enemies.
and
It's
obviously
clear
there
that
was-
under your leadership, the Department of Justice
There
no
was
longer
no
works for
question
American
in there
people. It works
for her to
for Donald
respond to.
Trump. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back.
May I answer?
I think our next questioner, Madam Attorney General, is going to give you time to respond to
Thank you, Chairman.
all kinds of things. So we will turn to the gentleman from Texas for 5 minutes.
Ms. Bondi, you go right ahead. I'm over here. The time is yours.
Thank you. First, he brought up the president saying they indicted me twice. They sure did. They tried to impeach him twice, and you, Mr. Nadler, were one of the leads on the impeachment. I was on the other side. I lived that with you. During impeachment, you said the president conspired, sought foreign interference in the 2016 election. Robert Mueller found no evidence, none, of foreign interference in 2016. Have you apologized to President Trump? Have you apologized to President Trump, all of you who participated in those impeachment hearings against Donald Trump? You all should be apologizing. You sit here and you attack the president, and I am not going to have it. I'm not going to put up with it. You know, all they want to do, all the American people need to know this. They are talking about Epstein today. This has been around since the Obama administration. This administration released over 3 million pages of documents, over 3 million, and Donald Trump signed that law to release all of those documents. He is the most transparent president in the nation's history. And none of them asked Merrick Garland over the last 4 years one word about Jeffrey Epstein. How ironic is that? You know why? Because Donald Trump, the Dow right now is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing. You're a great stock trader, as I hear, Raskin. The Dow is over 50,000 right now. The S&P at almost 7,000. And the NASDAQ smashing records. Americans' 401ks and retirement savings are booming. That's what we should be talking about. We should be talking about making Americans safe. We should be talking about, what does a Dow have to do with anything? That's what they just asked. Are you kidding?
Mr. Jordan, Mr. Jordan.
Committee will be in order.
Mr. Jordan, am I going to get an extra 45 seconds added to my time?
The committee will be in order. The time belongs to the gentleman from Texas. Ms. Bondi, the Attorney General can respond.
Thank you. The Dow has shattered 50,000 for the first time. This is crazy. They said it couldn't be done in 4 years, yet President Trump has done it in 1 year. National median rents have fallen to a 4-year low, thanks to Donald Trump. That's why they want to focus on Epstein and our most transparent president in the nation's history. The murder rate, as I said, has plummeted to a 125-year low, thanks to Donald Trump. For an unprecedented 9 straight months, there were 0 illegal border crossings at the southern border. That's what we should be focused on. All the great work that this president has done and will continue to do to keep America safe and to make Americans safe.
Thank you, Attorney General Bondi. I agree with you totally. I think you've done a fine job. I think that Democrats, in fact, should be apologizing to the Epstein victims for doing nothing during the 4 years that they were running the government. We did not hear about this, and it took you and President Trump to finally provide transparency and give answers to the American people, and I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you also for standing up for truth today and for fighting back against the theatrics and the time waste that you will endure over the next hour or two. I want to apologize on behalf of my colleagues on the left. They're not all that bad, but they've got to put on a show. And I'm sorry that you have to go through that. And I would like to yield the last, I'd say 40, but 40 is 80 seconds. The clock says 40, but I've got 80 seconds since I was so rudely interrupted, and I'll give all 80 seconds to Chairman Jordan.
And I would just yield to the Attorney General if she has anything to add.
I'm fine to continue. Thank you, Chairman.
All right, the chair now recognizes, the gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would note that Mr. Nadler's question has not yet been answered, but I want to start by asking that out of respect for the American public and the Epstein survivors, some of whom, of course, are here today, that we can have a transparent conversation and get the public the answers they deserve. I want to briefly direct your attention to 2 documents I'm hoping we will put up on the screen. In the first, an individual emails Jeffrey Epstein asking whether a woman identified as M was pro or civilian, and Epstein responds that she was a civilian, Russian, and fun. In the second email, Epstein writes to Steve Tisch about a Ukrainian girl, noting that she was, quote, a little freaked out by the age difference and stating that he would try to convince her not to return to Ukraine. He then instructs Mr. Tisch to call him, adding, I don't like records of these conversations. So I'd like to ask a straightforward question that really is either a yes or no answer. Do these emails constitute credible evidence, not proof, but credible evidence warning further investigation into whether Steve Tisch was involved in Epstein's criminal conduct? Do you think yes or no?
I'm not going to play a yes-no game with you, but I will answer the question to the best of my ability. As I said, we will look and investigate any case involving any victim. I'm not familiar. There were 3 million pages, of course, with that email. But of course, we will look into anything. The documents have been released, 3 million. The redacted versions, we left them open for all of you to come view. I believe you view them. If not, will you have some copies?
I'd like to.
Could I finish, please? I'm not being rude, please.
I only have 5 minutes.
No, yeah, and I only have 30 seconds based on your filibustering.
You didn't give a yes or no answer, so let me just go further. Director Patel testified in this committee room that there was no credible information indicating that Epstein trafficked victims to anyone else. And glancing at the documents, that proves that's not the case. In July, your department issued a memo stating that it had conducted an exhaustive review of the Epstein files and concluded that no additional individuals would be charged. So I did go over to the Department of Justice yesterday. I would note that 400 and all our 35 members are in the House, and there's 4 computers. So it would take many months to actually have the time. I only had a few hours. I think the transparency argument is really kind of a sham because it's not really possible.
Whoa. Did you have to wait to get a computer?
It is not possible to,
hang on.
to really go in. I did, however, see a U.S. attorney information for the Southern District of New York indicating that there were additional survivors and probable co-conspirators. Other members of Congress have uncovered likely co-conspirators whose names were blocked out. Now, the Epstein File Transparency Act, which all but one member of this House voted for and the president signed, requires the department to release everything except that it needs to be redacted to protect the victims or an ongoing prosecution, which apparently there is none from the testimony we have received. I am concerned that this act has not been fully complied with. When Director Patel came to the committee, he admitted that up to 1,000 FBI agents had gone through the files and redacted President Trump's name from them. And it's pretty clear that what has been transmitted from the FBI continues to redact President Trump's name, even though he is mentioned thousands of times in these files. So I think the credibility of the department in terms of complying with the act has been damaged. And I think the department's credibility has been damaged in other ways. I think we all saw the horrible video of American citizens being killed by ICE agents in Minneapolis. And I think how the department has handled these cases raises a lot of doubt about the department. State and local police in Minnesota got a court order to get access to the crime scene to be sure evidence would be properly preserved by federal agents. But they took the agents defied the court order, and in a departure from general policy, the DOJ is not collaborating with state and local law enforcement on these homicides. So I really think that is a disgraceful approach to the homicides of American citizens, and really does nothing to bring credit to your department. And Mr. Chairman, I would yield back.
Gentlelady yields back.
May I answer?
Attorney General can respond.
I find it interesting that she keeps going after President Trump, the greatest president in American history. And if they could maintain their composure, this isn't a circus, this is a hearing. I find it interesting she keeps going after Donald Trump. She doesn't say how much money she took from Reid Hoffman, did you? None. And nor did
Mr.
she
Chairman,
post
regular
anything.
order, please.
She
regular
posted
order.
nothing on her X account, on her Twitter account during the Biden years.
Gentlelady.
Yet now, all of a sudden,
question
she's
asked.
going after
Committee will be in
order. There was no question
Shame
asked
on
of the
you.
Attorney General. She doesn't just get to speak.
Committee will be in order.
I have a point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Committee will be in order.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Gentlelady can state her point of order.
When a witness attacks...
Not a valid point of order. You got to state.
She hasn't completed her point of order yet. Please let her speak, Mr. Chairman. Let's have some regular order here.
Regular order is you got to state the rule. And
I am trying to make a point of order that the witness,
And what rule are you referring to?
without responding to a question, has attacked me personally. I think it's pathetic that she can't answer the questions and
First
instead
time
is attacking
that is not even close
members
to a
of the
point of
committee.
order. The gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
In August of last year, I sent a letter to the Department of Justice asking for assistance in seeking compensation for the town of Lac du Flambeau. Town of Lac du Flambeau is in my district, and your office replied that it was an ongoing matter and unable to comment on it, which I understand. That was just fine. But I want to set this up just as a reminder. So 3 years ago, it was at this time of year that 4 roads were blockaded in the town of Lac du Flambeau, and the temperature was 25 below zero. People had to park their cars at a neighbor's place, take the snowmobile across the lake to get their car, and then be able to drive into town. There were people 80 and 90 years old that could not, were very concerned that they'd be able to get emergency medical services. And the perpetrators of this, the tribe out there, they demanded compensation from the town. I would call it extortion. They ultimately got $600,000 from the town of Lac du Flambeau. The unfortunate part, Mr. Chairman, is that the Biden administration took the side of the perpetrators who closed those roads off, and the Biden administration made it clear to the town of Lac du Flambeau that we are not on your side in regards to this. Well, fortunately, there was a federal judge that said, no, this is wrong, what happened, and these roads should be left open, they should continue to be left open. My question to you is, are you willing to work with my office and with the town of Lac du Flambeau to further investigate this matter and seek compensation from the tribal government after their extortion of $600,000 from this little town in northern Wisconsin?
Congressman, you do a great job representing your district. And yes, we would more than welcome working with you, and we are familiar with that investigation.
Mr. Chairman, I would just add, we're highlighting these miscarriages of justice in the previous administration. This is just another one of those small examples, no different than the Catholic Diocese in Richmond and many others that you have retold so many times. But here's another instance of what they did to a small town and nearly bankrupted them as a result of it. Fortunately, there was a federal judge that saw through it and has fixed it. I want to move on to fraud enforcement. You have established a National Fraud Enforcement Division. Is that correct, Madam Attorney General?
Yes, Congressman.
Has this new division begun any investigations and getting after those individuals that have committed the rampant fraud we've seen, like in Minnesota?
Well, it's not only rampant in Minnesota, it's rampant throughout this country. Much of it is in California, as you know, and other places. Yes, we are working on it actively. Our criminal fraud division has been working on it. We are expanding that. It was the Vice President's idea to come up with this amazing separate fraud division, which we are establishing and going nonstop, not only to expose the fraud in Minnesota, but around the country. It's taxpayer dollars that have been stolen from the American people, and we are committed to recovering that money and holding those people accountable.
Mr. Chairman, I would remind everyone here, why did this happen in Minneapolis? Why did federal law enforcement have to go to Minneapolis? Because of industrial scale fraud. It was an assistant United States attorney that said, this is industrial scale fraud that's going on in Minnesota at this point. I sent a letter to our governor in Wisconsin. We're right across the border there. My district is only 20 miles from the city of Minneapolis. And I asked him to open the books for a federal audit on food stamps and Medicaid. Don't you think it would be a good idea for every governor to do that at this point?
It protects the citizens, and I can't understand why that's not happening. And yes, I do think that's a great idea. It's happening around this country. And when our new division with Colin McDonald is established, it's established when Colin is confirmed. He's amazing. I think you've met with him, you said, Chairman. When that is established, we're going to work on both sides of the aisle. That's what we want to do, to stop fraud in every city, in every state, in this country. We will continue to fight for the American people.
So you would encourage every governor across the United States, after what we have seen in Minnesota, what we almost certainly know is happening in other states, you mentioned California, you would agree that every governor should avail themselves of federal resources to make sure that this industrial scale fraud is rooted out to protect the taxpayers of the United States. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Tennessee is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'd like to thank you for holding this hearing and holding it in a proper fashion as you have. Secondly, I'd like to thank all of the victims of the Epstein case who've come here to attend this hearing for doing it and for being brave and trying to move this justice forward. I apologize, I can't do it with the Attorney General not recognizing you. That's embarrassing. I am from Memphis, General Bondi, and Memphis does have the task force there. The Memphis Safe Task Force has been operating in Memphis for several months, and we do have a Democratic Mayor, Paul Young, and he's not against the task force, but he is against ICE being in Memphis, and he's not in favor of the National Guard being in Memphis. And I concur with him on those positions. I think the DEA being there, the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, the FBI, who have been in Memphis in other ways, having more people there is good for Memphis. Crime has gone down in Memphis, but it went down 25% before the task force got there under the direction of Mayor Young and Director Davis, Chief Davis. It's gone down about 15% more since then, and that's good. But I would like to comment that Mexico City's homicide rate has gone down 40% during the same time when Memphis has only gone down 25%. And that's not necessarily because of the task force, although the mayor says he thinks it's helped. So I thank you for that. You would agree, I presume, that violent crime in communities across our country is critically important, and that's why the task force is there. Is that not true?
Yes, and if I can just add to that, I think the surge, the FBI, our FBI under the leadership of Director Patel, came in and did a surge in Memphis.
Earlier.
Prior to the task force. And thank you for saying that about Mayor Young. He's been great to work with, and thank you.
He's a good guy.
He's a very good guy.
One problem I've got with where we are in priorities here. A recent Department of Justice, National Institute of Justice report based on arrest records in Texas and in California found that undocumented immigrants were less than half as likely as U.S.-born Americans to be arrested for homicide. And this pattern holds for assault, sexual assault, robbery, burglary, theft, and arson. Half as likely to be arrested for drug offenses. So I ask you, and I've written to you about this, there are TV ads that run that say to local law enforcement, specifically, says, are you tired of having your hands handcuffed because you can't do the things you wanted to do when you joined? And if you want to do something different, join ICE, and you'll get a $50,000 bonus, and we'll pay off your debts, student debts, and we'll help you with pensions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they're encouraging local law enforcement to leave local law enforcement and go to work for ICE. We need people working in the front lines and local law enforcement to protect our citizens from the worst of the worst. The worst of the worst are not the immigrants. The worst of the worst records show are native-born Americans, and they are committing crimes that hurt our citizens and our cities, and you're working against it, and thank you for that. But by trying to get our local law enforcement, where we have an undercount of officers in Memphis, to leave Memphis and go to work for ICE to deport people is a wrong priority. Why are we trying to get people, policemen who are working on the front lines, to leave the front lines, take the $50,000 and go to work for ICE and instead of working to fight the worst of the worst?
Congressman, I have not yet seen that commercial, that ad. I would argue that we need strong people in both local law enforcement, state law enforcement, and all of our federal agencies working together. I've seen some of the worst violent criminals who were in this country illegally. We both know that. And in Memphis, working hand in hand, I want to stick with Memphis and your mayor and what you discussed, because there have been nearly 6,000 arrests as of February 8th, and I think you agree with this, in your district, and almost 600 gang members. What we found in Memphis, a lot of the gangs are local gangs. But 600 gang members were taken off the streets.
Because I've only 40 seconds. I'm going to agree with you.
Yeah.
I thank you for that.
And 148 missing children were recovered by all of us working together, and nearly 1,000 illegal guns were seized as a result of us working together.
And I don't disagree with some of the things you said, but there are questions about those children, but it's a different thing. The fact is, ICE is running
rampant, and you are not investigating them. When they killed Mr. Prete and Ms. Good, that was an execution, and you did not investigate it. And you tried to investigate Ms. Good's widow, and you tried to investigate Mr. Prete. They were executed like Kristi Noem executed her dog. And that was wrong. And you should investigate those people, and you should investigate anybody that uses a weapon, in federal official or not, for civil rights violations. I yield back the balance.
Gentleman yields back his time. Madam Attorney General, anytime you need a break, just let us know. If not, we'll just keep going. The chair is now recognized for 5 minutes. Madam Attorney General, you're not allowed to exercise your constitutional rights in a way that tramples on someone else's, are you?
No.
No, you can't do that. I mean, you have a right to petition the government under the First Amendment. That doesn't mean you can come into this room and start screaming at Mr. Raskin or me or anybody else and disrupt a congressional hearing. You have a right to protest on the street, but that doesn't give you a right to go into the Capitol and disrupt Congress. Something these guys talk about every day. You can't do that. So when Don Lemon said that he was exercising his First Amendment free press rights, freedom of the press rights, that's not really accurate because he was trampling on other individuals' rights. Is that true?
Chairman, we will always protect our churches and the freedom of religion. And yes, that's accurate.
First right mentioned under the First Amendment, freedom of religion, freedom to practice your faith the way you think the good Lord wants you to, right?
That's right, under the federal government.
And isn't it true that Mr. Lemon met at a shopping center with the rioters who entered City's Church in St. Paul, met with them prior to marching to the church?
He did meet, and this is a pending case right now, so I will only stick to what is in the four corners of the unsealed indictment, if I could, Chairman.
Yeah, I'm
There's a lot more that will come out. But under the four corners of the indictment, yes, he did. They had an operation called Operation Pull-Up. They said they were gearing for a resistance. They met in a parking lot, and they caravanned to a church on a Sunday morning when people were worshiping together.
And Mr. Lemon said that he live streamed before entering the church with the rioters. Didn't he say we're going to head to the operation? Didn't he say this he said this on camera, is that right?
Yes, Chairman,
yeah.
And more.
That he was in Minnesota and that, as you said, they were gearing up for an operation. So you can't do that. This is why this is, I think, so important that this guy be held accountable, and I think why you guys have charged him and indicted him. Moving to a second subject here, will John Brennan be indicted? Mr. Brennan lied to the committee, which you're not supposed to do. Last Congress, when we deposed him, he definitely, 18 U.S.C. 1001, we're all familiar with it. He lied to the committee, and the committee, the Congress, and I think the country would like to know if, in fact, he's going to be indicted for lying. And here's why it's so important. I'll give you a chance to respond. Here's why it's so important. It wasn't just that he lied to us, it's what he lied to us about. He lied to us about when all this weaponization against the President of the United States started. He lied to us about the dossier, and specifically what role the dossier played in the intelligence community assessment. Because we know back when President Trump was first elected, first term, this is when it all started, which led to the Mueller and to the impeachment and to the Jack Smith and all the stuff that's happened in the last decade. But it began here, and he lied to Congress about the role he played. And I just want to read a couple of things he said during that deposition before I give you a chance to respond. Mr. Brennan, when asked a question, said the CIA was not involved at all with the dossier. He said it was their purview, FBI's purview, and not ours. He also said the CIA was very much opposed to having any reference or inclusion of the Steele dossier in the intelligence community assessment. Well, that's interesting because declassified information that was declassified this past summer by the CIA says something entirely different. It says, Brennan, I want to put this one up if we have it. It says, Brennan ultimately formalized his position in writing, stating that, quote, this is released by the CIA Director Ratcliffe. My bottom line is that what I believe that information warrants inclusion in the report. He was further asked by an CIA official. The same officer said when he approached the director and asked that the director refused to remove it after being explained this wasn't good. With the dossier's many flaws, he said, yes, but doesn't it ring true? So this is John Brennan using that document to change intelligence community assessment, which I think led to all the stuff we've seen over the last decade. And I think this committee in the country, Congress and the country would like to know if Mr. Brennan is going to be indicted.
What I can confirm is that we have received a referral from you, Chairman Jordan, to investigate John Brennan. His attorneys have made some public statements, but the department is still bound, of course, by our longstanding policy of not discussing matters. What I will say today, I can't confirm nor deny whether there is a pending investigation, but what I will say is no one is above the law.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Weaponization has ended.
Yeah.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from New York is recognized for a point of order.
If we want to know whether Mr. Brennan will be indicted, you should just ask the president.
Not a point of order, but I appreciate you trying to make it one. The gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Bondi, it's been reported that there were at one point 1,000 personnel assigned to the task of identifying and scrubbing Donald Trump's name from the Epstein files. Were those reports accurate?
I believe his name has appeared countless times in the documents
how
that
many
have
people were
been released.
assigned?
If I could finish, I'm going to read you the stats.
I just simply asked whether or not it was true that it was 1,000 folks who were assigned that task. Were those reports accurate?
There are more than 500 attorneys and reviewers. I cannot give you an exact number.
And I wanted to ask you about that also, because this is a different question that you're getting to now. There were 500 DOJ lawyers and others assigned the task of redacting the appropriate information, including identities of the Epstein victim survivors from the Epstein files prior to their release. 500, is that correct?
If I could have finished my answer, there were more than 500 attorneys and reviewers who assisted with the. They asked a question and they don't want an answer.
That answers my question, ma'am, and I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on.
From
General Bondi, would you agree?
Time belongs to the gentleman from Georgia.
General Bondi, would you agree that your 8 years of service as the state of Florida's Attorney General, the third largest state in the nation, served as an excellent preparation for your current role as Attorney General for the United States of America?
Not only that, I was a career prosecutor for 18 years.
And for
18 years.
And for 18 years,
He asked a question and doesn't want an answer. This is theatrics.
Well, no, for 18 years, you prosecuted serious felony cases, including drug cases, correct?
Oh, I prosecuted homicides, I prosecuted capital cases, I prosecuted domestic violence cases, I prosecuted multiple cases, and that's why I feel for all of these victims. And did you ask Merrick Garland this when you were sitting before him, sir?
You also prosecuted sexual assault cases and child sex trafficking cases, correct?
I answered that question earlier. I prosecuted multiple cases when I was a prosecutor.
Bottom line, you're an experienced and seasoned.
For 18 years.
Mr. Chairman, will you remind her of the rules? The time belongs to the member of the committee.
You are a seasoned and experienced prosecutor, correct?
I think we've established that.
Yes or no?
Does he want an answer or not?
I think he wants to say
I want a yes or no answer.
I think he wants to say
I want a yes or no answer, but I'll live with what you have already said. Let me ask you this question.
Clearly,
in the prosecution of sexual assault cases, you are acutely aware of how important it is to protect the identity of victims of sexual assault, correct?
I have addressed this multiple times. I think others were cutting me off when I was trying to.
Well, I just simply asked, are you aware of the fact that it's vitally important to protect the identity of sexual assault victims as you prosecute the people they accuse of assaulting them? Isn't that correct?
As Excuse me. As we have said multiple times,
Protection of the identity
of all victims
of the victims
are
is
protected.
so very
Who are
important.
protected under? Do you want me to answer or do you want to interrupt?
Well, because you're not answering the question. You do a Jekyll and Hyde kind of routine around here, and I just want you to answer my questions.
What does Jekyll and Hyde mean? Can you explain that?
Well, it means you're nice to the Republicans and you turn like Hyde on Democrats. But let me ask you this, ma'am. We have the Epstein victim survivors here today. Representative Jayapal asked a simple question. If you would be so kind and honorable as to turn around and face them and apologize to them for outing them. I mean, how many lives have been derailed because your department was either sloppy and incompetent or willfully trying to intimidate and punish these ladies for coming forward? Which was it?
The time of the gentleman has expired. The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Wisconsin for 5 minutes.
Attorney General Bondi. Who just a few years ago were openly supporting strong immigration enforcement after witnessing criminal illegal aliens wreak havoc on the American communities. I have a short video I just wanted to play.
Of immigrants. We're also a nation of laws. Undocumented workers broke our immigration laws, and I believe that they must be held accountable.
They've committed a crime, deport them. No questions asked, they're gone.
No great nation can be in a position where they can't control their borders.
While we need to address the issue of immigration and the challenge we have of undocumented people in our country, we certainly don't want any more coming in.
Every place in this country are rightly disturbed by the large numbers of illegal aliens entering our country. The jobs they hold might otherwise be held by citizens or legal immigrants. The public service they use impose burdens on our taxpayers. That's why our administration has moved aggressively to secure our borders more by hiring a record number of new border guards, by deporting twice as many criminal aliens as ever before, by cracking down on illegal hiring, by barring welfare benefits to illegal aliens.
Illegal immigration is wrong, plain and simple. When we use phrases like undocumented workers, we convey a message to the American people that their government is not serious about combating illegal immigration, which the American people overwhelmingly oppose. If you don't think it's illegal, you're not going to say it. I think it is illegal and wrong.
Open the borders, my God. You know, there's a lot of poverty in this world, and you're going to have people from all over the world, and I don't think that's something that we can do at this point. Can't do it.
Yes or no? Would you allow the cities to ignore the federal law?
No.
We simply cannot allow people to pour into the United States undetected, undocumented, unchecked, and circumventing the line of people who are waiting patiently, diligently, and lawfully to become immigrants in this country.
So, Attorney General Bondi, what's the Trump administration, DOJ, doing to end the open border policies of the prior administration that saw dangerous drugs and criminal aliens flood our communities?
Congressman, President Trump has worked tirelessly, as you know, to close our border, which is what the Democrats had asked for in that video. President Trump closed our borders on day one. He is protecting Americans. He is protecting our kids from the influx of drugs that were flowing into this country from Mexico, the fentanyl precursors that were coming from China. These precursors were taken from China into Mexico, and in Mexico, they were mixed and freely taken right into our country, along with gang members, MS-13, TDA, freely coming into our cities around our country. thanks to Joe Biden's open border policies. That has stopped under Donald Trump. It will no longer happen under this administration, and he is doing everything to keep Americans safe. And let me continue. When he was elected overwhelmingly by the American people, the majority of the American people wanted Donald Trump. One of the main reasons was border security and keeping Americans safe. And that's exactly what he did. And that's why today the other side sits here, they yell, they cut me off, they want to yell, they want to ask a question and don't want answers because they want to distract from all the great things that this president and this administration working hand in hand, and that includes Secretary Noem, who has closed our borders, and Tom Homan, who has closed our borders to keep Americans safe. And they're trying to distract from that, and they're not going to do it because the American people are smarter than that, and they see through their theatrics.
Thank you. Just quickly, yesterday, Senator Grassley reached out to my office to tell me that I was one of the 20 members that was now disclosed were under surveillance from Jack Smith. This brings up the question of non-disclosure orders and whether or not they should apply to members of Congress. But with my phone records being surveilled, as well as looks like 19 other members of Congress, I'm just wondering how DOJ views that.
Time is, the gentleman's expired, but the gentlelady can respond.
As I stated earlier, Congressman, anyone's records who were illegally obtained, Democrat or Republican, we will fight vigorously to stop that. Anything with Arctic frost, I can't discuss right now.
And isn't it true, Madam Attorney General, the DOJ has changed their policy? You can't do that now. The DOJ is not going to go do that and ask the judge for an NDO.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good. That in and of itself tells you why how wrong it was. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California.
Great, thank you. Madam Attorney General, you acknowledged earlier to Mr. Johnson that President Trump was mentioned and the release countless times, you said, in the Epstein files. I just want to play a video, though, for you that I think speaks to the frustration that many of these victims have. Of times Trump's name appears in the files, so it could at least be 1,000 times. Is that right?
The number is a total misleading factor. We have not released anyone's name that we have not released anyone's name in the Epstein files that has not been credible.
Director, could it at least be 1,000 times?
We have released every piece of legally permissible information.
Okay,
you can characterize the numbers however you want it.
I'm claiming my time, Director. It sounds like if you don't know the number, it could at least be 1,000 times. Which
it's not.
Me,
it's not.
Is it at least 500 times?
No.
Is it at least 100 times?
No.
Then what's the number?
I don't know the number.
I understand why the victims are frustrated, and the Attorney General acknowledged what Mr. Patel would not acknowledge, that it was way more than 1,000 times. But I want to move, Madam Attorney General, to weaponization of government. And yesterday it was reported that 6 members of Congress had indictments sought against him, and they were not returned by a grand jury. My colleagues have spoken about their frustration of being in subpoenas and having cell phone records combed through. Well, in 2017 and 2018, Adam Schiff and I had our cell phone records and email records combed through, not by you, but a different Department of Justice under the president. It was in retaliation for our role in the Russia interference campaign. An Inspector General report would find this improper and that the predicate for it was absurd. In 2020, after sitting on 2 committees that were a part of the president's first impeachment, an FBI agent leaked my cooperation in a national security case where my campaign was targeted. The president's FBI senior leadership authorized 2 statements to the press that said I was never suspected of wrongdoing and only helped the investigation. But that didn't stop the death threats or my GOP colleagues from referring me to an ethics investigation where Kevin McCarthy's chairman on the ethics committee would find the same thing as the FBI. Our current FBI director would then write a book called Government Gangsters and identify a long list of enemies. About a quarter of them have been either investigated or indicted. He listed me at the very top, along with Adam Schiff, and during that same testimony, refused to recuse himself when asked if he would recuse if any case came across his desk involving me or people on that list. Since that testimony, his department has put me under investigation with Senator Schiff for the nonsense mortgage fraud cases that we've seen. I get it. This is what the president does. I've priced it in. We have a bingo card at home that my kids have made of what will come next. I expected that the president would come after his enemies. But what I want to talk to you next is serious, and I did not expect this would happen, and I'd like your help on it. The president has inspired death threats against me and many sitting up here with me. In June 2025, an individual left 11 voicemails at my district office. On the voicemails, they said, "Get the message to him. I'm gonna hunt him down, that motherfucker, and toss his ass over the Golden Gate Bridge by my fucking self." Donald Trump's Department of Justice in the Northern District of California declined to prosecute. On May 14, 2025, on Twitter, responding to something I posted, an individual said, "No, it wasn't Eric, and now I'm going to kill you." The Department of Justice from the Southern District of Texas declined to prosecute. May through December of 2025, we received messages at my office that said, "I hope somebody shoots you and your children and your wife in the head. Pew, pew, motherfucker, pew, pew." I would stay indoors as much as possible, and my children, unfortunately, have to do that. The Department of Justice has not charged this individual and cited that he's a prolific caller and has health conditions, although what we have found in our own investigation and his voicemails is that he has said he will employ others to do this. The president can come after me. It's fine. I'm in the arena. So are these folks. But we never expected that the Department of Justice would not seek to prosecute and investigate those who are making threats against us. And that would include those on that side of the aisle. And I'm just asking for your help to protect life, because life is at risk with the environment we're in right now.
Congressman, I completely agree with you. I know about several of those personally involving you. I believe one has been charged publicly, and there's something I would be happy to talk to you about off camera, but I can assure you that they are very serious. They are being looked into, and I can give you more details on those. None of you should be threatened, ever. None of your children should be threatened. None of your families should be threatened. And I will work with, you can come into my office any day. I will work with all of you on both sides of the aisle if you are ever threatened. And I'll gladly talk to you after this hearing about your cases. But I can tell you some of them are very active.
Appreciate that. Now yield back.
Gentleman yields back, and we're sorry for what the gentleman and his family had to go through. We appreciate what the Attorney General said. And I think some of the things that the gentleman from California related, we can all relate to, and it's unfortunate, it's wrong, as the Attorney General said, and we appreciate the help we get from the Justice Department. With that, we will now recognize the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Van Drew.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know where to begin. Thank you for being here, General. You might see me when I'm right in front of you. I have to mention this first. You know, I used this word before, and my friends on the other side of the aisle got mad at me, but hypocrisy. Epstein, Epstein, Epstein. But for years on the other side of the aisle, we heard nothing. Crickets, not a word. Nothing was said when they were in control. Nothing was mentioned basically till last summer, and the ranking member points out that he did do something last year. Yeah, he did a letter complaining about the plea deal for Maxwell, but it wasn't a big deal. Then we get a new administration, and all of a sudden it's a big deal, and they feign concern, they're upset, they're investigating. They had all these years and all this time. And in fact, Stacey Plaskett, and we all know that name, when they had a congressional hearing, Democratic member, were taking texts from Epstein on questions to ask to go after Trump. So Epstein was using her Democratic colleague as a tool to go after President Trump. Just everybody keep that in mind. And then we talk about ICE and how horrible it is. And there are concerns. Everybody wants everything to go right. Nobody ever wants to see somebody die. And they complain about it. But at the same time, hypocrisy, they encourage constituents to go after the ICE agents, to challenge them, to hurt them, to attack them. And that doesn't make sense. That's hypocrisy. And then we hear about the concern of, going after Democrats, that the legal system, that judiciary and Department of Justice is going after Democrats. But they literally rework the legal system under Alvin Bragg and Letitia James to go after Republicans and those sympathetic to Republicans. So, be careful when you accuse others that you're not guilty yourself. Be careful of what you say, because you got a history, and it's easy to go over it. You know, I just want to talk about where we were and where we are now. We had over 10 million illegal crossings in the past between 2020 and 24. Over 10 million. There's probably a much bigger number. I'm being conservative. We were told the people weren't dangerous, but they were, General. They were dangerous, many of them. More than 300 individuals on the terror watch list during that time. Violent criminals came across, as we saw consequences where mothers and fathers, daughters and sons, children were raped, murdered, hurt, abused, beaten, trafficked, all from the drugs. My God, the drugs they brought into our babies in this country. 73,000 illegals with criminal histories, 20,000 with convictions of assault, robbery, and sex offenses, 13,000 convicted murderers in our beautiful country, 15,000 convicted sexual assault offenders. It was madness. It was insanity. It's bizarre. It's perverse. What in God's name were you doing? So we finally are cleaning this up now. We're finally trying to make it right and safe for our people. So my questions are this. General, do you believe in removing criminal illegal aliens from our communities will save American lives?
Yes, and given the cases that you just discussed, that's proof of it every single day. President Trump is committed to that. This entire cabinet is committed to that and making and keeping Americans safe.
Thank you. Would you agree that, and thank you for doing that, would you agree that allowing individuals with known criminal histories to enter and remain in the United States, we knew this back then, they knew it. Would you agree that creates serious risks to our public safety? I know the answers, but let's just say them clearly.
Yes.
Would you agree that when dangerous individuals are released instead of detained, and they were released over and over and over again, and these are the real issues. This is really what America cares about. They want their children and their families to be safe. Do you think if you release them instead of detaining them, that crimes will happen because of that?
Absolutely.
Would you agree that, I'm sorry.
And it did.
And it did, thank you. Would you agree that cooperation between, and this is a biggie, and I'm gonna ask you to elaborate on this. This is a big deal. This is why some of the problems we're seeing in some of the places like Minnesota are happening. That cooperation between federal and local enforcement, which we always used to have, helps remove violent offenders from our communities, that we should be a team.
Yes.
And can you elaborate on that a little bit? In other words, when the local enforcement is forced by the politicians, not their fault, not to do their job and not cooperate, why does it create the situations that we see where we have need for crowd control? By the way, they're not peaceful. Those are not peaceful protesters. We know what a peaceful protester is. When you spit on law enforcement, when you push them, when you hit them, when you beat their car, if you can answer the question, thank you.
And time's expired.
I'll yield back.
You may answer the question.
Thank you. Yes, I spent 4 days myself in Minnesota, in Minneapolis. What I will say about some of these sanctuary cities, some of these democratic cities, law enforcement, they quietly want to work with us. I've spoken to law enforcement in multiple cities who want to work with us. And yes, we're gonna do everything we can to keep our citizens safe, whether or not these Democrat-controlled sanctuary cities do or don't.
And damn it, that's what really matters. I yield back.
Mr. Chair, I have a UC.
Ms. Crockett from Texas is recognized for UC.
Thank you so much. Donald Trump's approval rating implodes on his strongest issue. This is from Newsweek today. It says 40% of people approve of Trump's handling of immigration and border security, while 60% disapprove.
Without objection,
that is a
admitted.
net drop
Now I
to
recognize the gentleman
-20.
from California, Mr. Liu.
Thank you, Attorney General Bondi, for being here today. I'm going to show you two photos.
Thank you.
I'm going to show you two photos of former Prince Andrew. Prince Andrew attended various parties with Jeffrey Epstein. Under the law Congress passed, you were allowed to redact photos to protect the victims of Epstein's sex trafficking operation. You redacted the photos of this victim's face because you were following the congressional law. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, that we redacted the victim's
Because you were
face?
following the congressional law, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You have now established that please put the photos back up, that we are looking at a sex trafficking victim. Under the Federal Victims Trafficking Protection Act, not only is Jeffrey Epstein guilty, but anyone who patronizes Epstein's sex operation is also guilty of a crime. That's why I find it absolutely despicable that you sought to protect Epstein's clients, like former Prince Andrew. Last July, you closed the case on Epstein's abusers. The July 2025 memo from your Department of Justice stated, quote, "We did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties." These two photos, please put the photos back up. These two photos staring you in the face are evidence of a crime and more than enough evidence to predicate an investigation against former Prince Andrew. So I ask you, Attorney General Pam Bondi, why did you shut down this investigation last July, and why have you not prosecuted former Prince Andrew?
I don't believe you asked Merrick Garland these questions when he was Attorney General and set before
I agree with you.
You twice.
I'm reclaiming my time.
Never
I agree with
mentioned
you. I agree with you. During
Were
the
you not here
during the Biden administration, I called for people looking at Epstein files. Merrick Garland dropped the ball, as did Attorney General Bill Barr, as did Alex Acosta, a whole string of failures. But you are in charge. You have the power to change things, to hold these men accountable, and you're doing the opposite. You're protecting them. So I want to move on to another man.
Can I answer
Donald
that,
Trump.
though?
I want to move on to another
Can I answer
question.
your question about protecting
You
Prince
answered the
Andrew?
question.
You're saying no. I love this.
I want to discuss another man, Donald Trump, who is all over the Epstein files, like former Prince. Here's a video. Like former Prince Andrew, Donald Trump attended various parties with Jeffrey Epstein. I want to know, were there any underage girls at that party or at any party that Trump attended with Jeffrey Epstein?
This is so ridiculous, and that they are trying to deflect from all the great things Donald Trump has done. There is no evidence that Donald Trump has committed a crime. Everyone knows that. This has been the most transparent presidency. He's the one that asked that those files
I'm reclaiming my time.
be
I got your
released.
answer. You said there's no evidence.
Trump asked
Mr. Chairman,
that
please
those
stop the
files
clock.
be
My time. Stop
signed,
the clock.
The legislation.
Time.
This is
Time.
ridiculous.
Time belongs to the gentleman from California.
Okay. I'm going to put up another document from a witness who called the FBI's National Threat Operations Center, because I believe you just lied under oath. There is ample evidence in the Epstein file.
Don't you ever accuse me of a crime.
I believe you just lied under oath, and this is all on videotape. You said there's no evidence of a crime. I'm showing you, here is a witness statement who called into the FBI's Threat Operations Center. He drove Donald Trump around in a limo. He overheard what Donald Trump said to Jeffrey on his cell phone. He was so angry, he was going to stop a limo and hurt Donald Trump. And he met a girl who said she was raped by Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. She later had her head blown off, and officers at the scene said that could not have been suicide. No one at the Department of Justice interviewed this witness. You need to interview this witness immediately. Epstein should rot in hell, so should the men who patronized his operation. And as we sit here today, there are over 1,000 sex trafficking victims, and you have not held a single man accountable. Shame on you. If you had any decency, you would resign right after this hearing concludes.
The gentleman has expired.
May I respond?
Yeah, I don't know how you respond. No one can.
I did not ask a question, Ms.
He doesn't
You're allowed
want to talk
to.
about
I did
the
not ask a
horrific
question.
crime in California. He does not want to talk about
I did not ask a
crime
question.
in his
She
state.
can't just
Madam
add
Attorney
lib
General.
stuff. I did not ask a question.
Meeting will be in order. The gentleman has yielded back his time. I think our next witness will be more than happy to let the Attorney General
Madam
respond.
Attorney General, would you like to?
Gentleman from Alabama is recognized for 5 minutes.
You have a few minutes to respond.
Thank you, Congressman. This is what Congressman Liu didn't want to talk about. He didn't want to talk about all the crime that is happening in his state. California refuses to honor detainees because of its dangerous sanctuary city policies. The refusal means California has released 4,561 criminal illegal aliens onto its street. The crimes of these aliens include 31 homicides, 661 assaults, 574 burglaries, 184 robberies, 1,489 dangerous drug offenses, 379 weapons offenses, and 234 sexual predator offenses. That's why they are deflecting. That's why they're trying to talk about the Epstein files. That's currently happening in his home state.
Attorney General, thank you for being here, and I wanted to make sure you had time to respond. I'm going to change gears a little bit. In October, when you were testifying before the Senate, I know you and my friend Senator Katie Britt discussed concerns of infiltration of the illegal Chinese vapes into our country. As a father of three, obviously, I'm worried a little bit about this, and I believe that many parents in the country share our similar concerns. Can you provide an update on DOJ's work in this space over the past few months?
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up. We're talking about the vapes. And this should be an issue where both sides of the aisle can work together on. Parents need to understand, children need to understand that so many of these are being manufactured in China, sent to our country, and have the potential to be laced with lethal drugs. We've seen an overdose. We need to get on the front end of this before we have another crisis and children are dying. I've partnered with Secretary Kennedy, of course, at HHS on this matter, but thank you for bringing it up. You know, they're selling these things as flavored vapes illegally in many stores around the country. Secretary Kennedy and I actually we went and did something on this, and it was sadly the day that Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And so it didn't get a lot of attention, nor should it have after that happened. But yes, we're continuing to work on that, and thank you for bringing that up. That's happening in all of our states, and I would ask everyone here, I know Congresswoman Ross was just nodding, it's happening in every state. And not only are they laced with THC, many of these vapes, but they could be laced with fentanyl. We have had a child, I wish I could think of the state it was in, but we have already had someone overdose. And we have to get together on this, and we have to get on the front end of this. And I would love to work across the aisle on this to protect our kids. How many school kids do you see now vaping? And it's not only, I believe a vape has 20 cigarettes, but you know, that's one vape is 20 cigarettes, I believe it is, but also what they could be laced with, because so many of them, the majority of them, are manufactured in China.
Sure, and if you need additional resources, please let us know as you're going through the process. And then I'm going to change gears one more time on you. Under the Biden administration, there was a lot of confusion created when parts of the DOJ began treating software developers like financial institutions. Even when they did not hold or control anyone's money, they were simply building the technology. That uncertainty made it harder for Americans to build, innovate here at home. Earlier this year, the Deputy Attorney General issued a memo entitled Ending Regulations by Prosecution, a clear break from the Biden administration's approach, and I think it's important that that's a good step in the right direction, but can you talk a bit about how the DOJ is now putting that memo into practice, especially when it comes to making sure that people are just writing the software and don't control the user's funds, we don't want them treated as an unlicensed money, or they're not money transmitters, so.
Yes, and we're doing everything.
Gentleman yields back. Has jump for Arizona for unanimous consent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a number of UCs.
Gentleman can proceed.
Thank you. Bombshell new docs show Trump called police about Epstein in 2006.
Without objection.
Kamala Harris defends Biden administration decision not to release Epstein files.
Without objection.
Why weren't they released during the Biden administration?
Without objection.
House Democrat Stacey Plaskett exchanged texts with Epstein during 2019 congressional hearing.
Without objection.
New York judge allows Epstein victims' claims against Plaskett to proceed.
Without objection.
Hakeem Jeffries solicited funding from Epstein in 2013 after financier was convicted child sex offender.
Without objection.
Jeffrey Epstein was invited to dim fundraising dinner and to get to know Hakeem Jeffries by firm working with Brooklyn's Barack.
Without objection.
An email from Leslie Groff to Jeffrey Epstein concerning Hakeem Jeffries fundraising. Epstein file says Biden was replaced in 2019, question mark?
Without objection.
Thank you.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from California is recognized. Mr. Correa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome, Ms. A.G. Bondi. I agree with you. Our top priority should be protecting Americans. In my past life in the California State Legislature, I did a lot of work on solving sex crimes, passing legislation to update our codes. And I found that the biggest challenge to solving sex crimes is reporting them. Victims have to have the guts to stand up to report those sex crimes. But it's not easy. It's the most unreported sex crime there is. Crime there is sex crimes. It's painful, humiliating. A lot of time the victims don't think anything's gonna come out of their reporting these crimes. Then we have adults who as children were molested, boys and girls who will live in silence for the rest of their life. I believe the Epstein files are just one of many sex rings, sex crimes taking place in our society today. I hear 1,200 Epstein victims, some additional victims as young as 9 to 10 years old. The challenge I have today, what bothers me today about this hearing, Madam AG, is what's the message we're sending out there on Main Street? Shouldn't ask a question I don't know an answer to, but I'm gonna ask the victims behind you right now. First, can you please stand up? And then, can you please raise your hand if you think after everything you've heard today, you feel that our AG, the feds, have your back? Do we have your back? Raise your hand if you're confident that we got your back. And that's the issue, Madam AG. We've got to make sure that victims stand up and report the crimes. Otherwise, we're going to be taking a step backwards. Today, AI, cyber, social media, the new realm for people to be hurt, attacked sexually. These are the areas I'd welcome the opportunity to work with you on. It's not your problem, it's not my problem, it's our problem. But to have redacted files that are not showing us the names of these predators is wrong. These are very powerful people. This was a very expensive business, and we don't know who they are. I would imagine they're very prominent Republicans, very Republican Democrats, and we are covering up for them. We got to know what's going on out there, Madam AG. It looks like you want to say something. I'm going to give the opportunity to address my statement.
I look forward to working with you on any crimes involving child sex predators, children, and also cyber crimes. That is a tremendous problem now throughout our country. AI, you are correct. AI is causing great problems online we're working on that though. AI is an incredible tool, but it also can be fraught with peril with victims of crime. I've experienced that with someone I know who we've been trying to help. I look forward, though, to working with you on that and all cyber crimes. Can I?
Please, go ahead.
And as I said before, to any victims, we ask them to come forward to our office, and we want to work with them. I have never not worked with a victim, and I believe I've actually spoken to several of the victims.
Madam, if I can reclaim my time, I only have a minute.
Behind me.
If I can reclaim my time. I just think we start out by making sure those redactions are unredacted, those Epstein files, to make sure that the public, according to the law, following the law, that those names in those files are made public. We have to make sure we tell those predators there is no place for them to hide, and if they commit the crime, they're going to fry for it. It starts with showing us the names of the perpetrators in the Epstein files.
May I respond to that?
Sure.
Okay. So if any man's name was redacted that should not have been, we will, of course, unredact it. If a victim's name was unredacted, please bring it to us and we will redact it. We were given 30 days to review and redact and unredact millions of pages of documents. Our error rate is very low, but there are
victims are
always
right behind you. We've got to convince them that we're doing a good job
everything
of
we can
protecting
to help
them.
the victims. We will
Thank
do
you,
everything
Mr.
we can.
Chair, I'm out of time.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from California, Mr. Kiley, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Madam Attorney General. I wanted to return to a point that the chairman raised at the beginning of this hearing, which is these jurisdictions that refuse to honor detainer requests from immigration and customs enforcement, often called sanctuary jurisdictions. Now, I know that you are not involved directly in immigration operations per se, but you do deal with the legal issues surrounding these jurisdictions. So let's say we have someone who's here illegally, who has committed a crime that, like the thousands of people you mentioned in California, murderers, sexual predators, drug traffickers. If that individual is in detention in a jurisdiction that has a sanctuary policy where they do not honor ICE detainers versus in any other jurisdiction where they do, how does the nature of apprehending that person, how does the nature of ICE's involvement in that operation differ in those two circumstances?
Well, I believe you've seen that in Minnesota, where people were not cooperating with us. I believe there a lot of local law enforcement did want to cooperate, but we are doing everything in our power to arrest and deport illegal criminal aliens, and that is not going to stop under Donald Trump's administration. You know, why sanctuary cities are so dangerous, what we've seen in Minneapolis. Where do all the criminals go? The gangs, TDA, MS-13, where are they going to go? They're going to go to a sanctuary jurisdiction because they believe they're protected, and that's not fair to the citizens of those cities.
Yeah, and this is a point that there at least used to be a lot of consensus on. The idea that, you know, it's better to do a handoff to the immigration authorities in a custodial setting rather than releasing them where they have to be apprehended in the community. This is Alejandro Mayorkas when he was before this committee, not exactly a paragon of border security, but he said, "I do not consider it in the service of public safety to release an individual into the community when that individual can be released to immigration and customs enforcement for prompt removal." Now, his words are one thing, his actions are another. But when you have jurisdictions across the country, including my state of California, doing systematically precisely the thing that even Alejandro Mayorkas said threatens public safety, I mean, what does that say to you?
It's a danger to the citizens of your community, and thank you for fighting to protect them.
Absolutely. And you know, we're having this conversation right now in relation to Homeland Security funding. And I believe there are some common sense reforms that have been proposed that folks on both sides would agree make sense. But those reforms have to go hand in hand with reforming this reckless practice of refusing to cooperate, refusing to honor detainers, and declaring oneself to be a sanctuary. So I'm hoping that we can find bipartisan support for what has long been a bipartisan principle. I want to go to a second topic, which is the school board memo, which I know that you have rescinded. And it was initially promulgated by Attorney General Garland when he came into office with President Biden, essentially opening an investigation into parents who were showing up at school board meetings and expressing their views on COVID policies, masks, various other issues, and using the full apparatus of federal law enforcement and counterterrorism to go after these parents. Now, he said this was because there was an increase of threats, but when even his own FBI director, Christopher Wray, was before this committee, he said there was no evidence of an increase in threats. Yet nevertheless, when I asked him if he regretted the memo, Attorney General Garland said there was absolutely nothing wrong with the memo. Now, I take it you disagree with that, having now rescinded it?
Absolutely. That was one of the main focuses of President Trump and this administration. We will protect parents at school boards. We will protect children in schools. We will protect parents' rights for their children's education in our school system in this country. We will protect Christians. We will protect everyone who wants to freely protest. If Christians want to protest in front of an abortion clinic without being arrested, they will do so.
Thank you very much. And finally, I thank you for your efforts to step up the detection and rooting out of fraud. My home state is California. Any idea if there might be any fraud going on in California?
Well, we are establishing, as you have heard, a fraud unit, and I'm sorry you're having to deal with that in your state, but the cavalry's coming. And we have Colin McDonald, who is hopefully will be confirmed soon. We're working on Minneapolis. I don't know if you were sitting here when I said that, but California was right up there. I'm sorry to say for both sides of the aisle that California is right up there with fraud. It's out of control, but we are coming to your rescue. Donald Trump is coming to the rescue.
Well, thank you very much. And unfortunately, I think you'll find that what's happening in California pales in comparison to what's been going on in Minnesota. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Actually, I think the gentlelady from Pennsylvania.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi, I'm here. On September 25th, President Trump signed a memorandum known as NSPM 7, purporting to address domestic terrorism. But Americans across the political spectrum were immediately alarmed by the memo's blurring of the line between unlawful conduct and constitutionally protected speech and activity, as well as its call to investigate, prosecute, and dismantle groups that the president and Stephen Miller described without evidence as, quote, an organized campaign of radical left terrorism. Now, counterterrorism experts were further alarmed by the administration's singular focus on left-wing extremism, combined with the sudden deletion from the DOJ website of decades of research and law enforcement analysis, which had concluded that right-wing extremism poses the greatest terrorism threat to Americans. The president's memo broadly and vaguely links violent conduct to ideologies, and it targeted specifically anti-American, anti-Christian, and anti-capitalist beliefs, as well as, quote, hostility to so-called traditional American views on family, religion, and morality, end quote. President Trump has repeatedly and openly, however falsely, tried to brand his political opponents with these sentiments listed in his memo. But as you know, as a lawyer, holding beliefs that the White House disagrees with is not a crime. And the statute defining domestic terrorism requires criminal acts, not just thoughts and ideas. That's why legal experts, nonprofit leaders, religious freedom, and civil rights advocates immediately raised the alarm that the new presidential directive was a politically motivated attack on civil society designed to silence those who disagree with the administration. So, Ms. Bondi, Section 3 of that memo directed you, as Attorney General, to submit to the President and Stephen Miller a list of groups or entities whose members are engaged in acts that meet the definition of domestic terrorism. And then on December 4th, you directed the FBI to work with a variety of law enforcement entities to compile a list of groups and entities engaged in such acts by January 3rd, 2026, and to update that report every 30 days thereafter. So can we assume that you or persons under your direction at the Department of Justice have prepared that list of groups or entities who are designated as domestic terrorist organizations? And I just remind you, that's a yes or no question. Did you prepare the list?
I'm not going to answer it yes or no, but what I will say is I know Antifa is part of that. I will talk to you about that.
I'm reclaiming my time. I asked you whether you
an Antifa member was
list.
arrested in Minneapolis
I'm
federal
reclaiming
court for
my
cyber
time.
stalking.
Did you
they
have
ask a question
list?
and don't want an answer.
The answer is yes or no.
Time belongs to the gentlelady from Pennsylvania. Gentlelady can proceed.
Okay. So will you commit to providing this committee with any list of organizations that you have recommended be designated as domestic terrorist organizations?
We will comply with the law in all matters.
Will you commit to provide this committee with your list of entities that you recommend be designated as domestic terrorist organizations.
I'm not going to commit to anything to you because you won't let me answer questions.
Okay, well then, we do understand that your current position is that you have a secret list of people or groups that you are accusing of domestic terrorism, but you won't share it with Congress. And I'd remind you that when the U.S. government designates an entity as a foreign terrorist organization, it must report that to Congress and to the entity, because the government can make a mistake and the entity has the opportunity to contest it. So your position seems to be that if you falsely designate an American or an American organization as a terrorist group, there's nothing they can do about it. I think we get it. You don't want to answer the question.
No, you don't get anything regarding public safety.
Thank you.
Nothing.
Thank you for the insult. It's clear you didn't come to Congress prepared to answer questions that the American people have every right to have answered. But if you were prepared to answer truthfully, here's what we expect the facts to show. The administration is keeping lists of Americans who the White House says are engaged in domestic terrorism. Those lists could include Americans who have not committed any acts of terrorism, but simply disagree with this administration, people like Renee Good and Alex Preddy. And your list may include clergy, elected officials, and members of indivisible groups across the country. And those lists likely don't include Proud Boys or Oath Keepers who were actually convicted. Americans have never tolerated political demagogues who use the government to punish people on an enemies list. It brought down McCarthy, it brought down Nixon, and it will bring down this administration as well.
And you're right. That's why we're so glad they rescinded the memorandum targeting parents. For goodness sake, as the gentleman from California just pointed out in his 5 minutes, the gentleman from Kentucky is recognized for 5
May I
minutes.
respond very briefly to her statement?
Well, I think we can do that
Okay.
probably on one of our members' time.
Okay, thank you. I don't want that to get away. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Behind me, I have 3 documents from the DOJ production that are emblematic of the massive failure of the DOJ to comply with the Epstein Files Transparency Act. To my right is an email that was sent by the victims' lawyers to the DOJ. It was a list of names not to redact, or sorry, a list of names not to release. What did the DOJ do with this email? They released this email in the document production. Literally the worst thing you could do to the survivors, you did. And they're getting phone calls. A lot of these people didn't want to be known. And we know you touched the document because you redacted one name and you redacted the lawyer's name, but you left the survivor's name there. The next document I want to show you, that was in the title, the victims' survivors' names, all right? The title of this one is Child Sex Trafficking, Co-Conspirators, fully redacted. And by the way, I'm gonna unredact them here. Les Wexner is in this. Now your your deputy attorney general said, oh, well, he appears hundreds of times in the files, but he doesn't appear in this file until I forced you to release it, where he's listed as a co-conspirator, not to tax evasion, but to child sex trafficking, not to prostitution, not to money laundering, child sex trafficking. And then finally, what we have here is the third exhibit that I have is emblematic of the FD 302 release. These are the documents that we need that you're holding on to and over-redacting because they have the names of the men who are implicated. How do we know? Because the survivors gave testimony to the FBI, and it's in there. And what happens when you go to the portal at the DOJ to look at what's behind this redaction? Another redaction. So we can't even see them. And then there's some of these files you've pulled down from the website that we will never see because we can't search the redactions. So I have several questions for you. Who's responsible? Are you able to track who in your organization made this massive failure and released the victims' names? Are you able to track who it was that obscured Les Wexner's name as a co-conspirator in an FBI document? Do you have that kind of accountability?
I believe Wexner's name was listed more than 4,000 times.
Yeah, I already told you that. This is where he's listed as a co-conspirator.
Can I finish my answer? Come on, let me finish my answer. We corrected that within 40 minutes. He was already, you're acting like everybody's trying to cover up Wexner's name.
Reclaiming my time.
I'm going to answer this question.
Reclaiming my time. Mr. Chairman.
This isn't how this works.
Can I have my time back? Mr. Chairman.
The gentlelady can give her answer. The time belongs to the gentleman from Kentucky.
All right, I'm reclaiming my time.
Can I give my answer?
So I'm going to put the language of the bill up on the screen.
Chairman, may I give my answer on that? It's a political joke, and I need to give my answer on that.
We'll let the Attorney General respond, and then the gentleman can move to his next question.
It's my time.
Within 40 minutes, you asked me a question. Within 40 minutes, Wexner's name was added back.
Within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed.
There was one redaction out of over
listed as a co-conspirator.
And we invited you in. This guy has Trump derangement syndrome. He needs to get, you're a failed politician. You need to get on these matters.
Mr. Chairman, please restore his time and remind the witness of the rules here.
There is no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals.
Is that your position as well?
My position is any victim who comes forward, of course, we would love to hear from them. 1-800-CALL-FBI. Did you ask Merrick Garland that the last 4 years? Did you talk about Epstein?
I am reclaiming my time. I'm glad you're asking about Merrick Garland.
You don't get to reclaim time
when you don't. Because this is bigger than Watergate.
When I don't answer a question the way you want.
This goes over 4 administrations. You don't have to go back to Biden. Let's go back to Obama. Let's go back to George Bush. This cover-up spans decades, and you are responsible for this portion of it.
And that's where the
I want to know, at what point did the FBI and the DOJ decide that Lex Wessner was not a co-conspirator? Because our Epstein Files Transparency Act requires you, please put it back on the screen, please, to release the internal decision about whether to prosecute him or not, and it's not in the files, and it's not in the files for any of these other men.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
May she answer?
And he's a hypocrite because he voted against the ban that we were talking about on deep fake AI porn. Only 2 people voted against it, and you were one of them, hypocrite.
The gentleman's time has expired.
She didn't answer the question.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Chairman, could she answer the question?
Chairman, I was wondering.
The gentlelady's allowed, the Attorney General's allowed to respond the way she wants to respond to any member's questions, Republican, Democrat.
I have unanimous consent request.
Gentleman's recognized for a UC.
All right. This is an example. I'm submitting these 302 forms that are entirely redacted, even when you go to look at them.
Without objection.
I'm submitting a witness statement that implicates Les Wexner.
Without objection.
I'm submitting an article from the New York Times that the DOJ released nude photos and identifiable pictures of the victims. I'm submitting a letter from A.G. Bondi to Kash Patel, imploring him to quit keeping the files when you found out that they were keeping files from you, because they're still redacting files that you...
Chairman, are we going to recess for votes?
Yes, we are.
I'm submitting for unanimous consent a document of 17 individuals who've resigned because of the Epstein files.
Without objection. Just want to check on how much time we have left in votes, but one thing I've learned here of late that they'll wait on us. How much time do we have? Oh, they just called. Okay. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Maryland.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start by saying I appreciate what you said, Attorney General Bondi, and you said it to me personally, that you take the personal security of every member of Congress seriously and that people can contact you about that. And in these times, that's a very serious matter. So I thank you for that. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 7 of the Constitution is the Domestic Emoluments Clause. And it says that the president is limited to his salary in office and cannot receive any other money from the federal government while he's in office. It cannot be increased by $1. This president is the first president in U.S. history who has repeatedly sued the federal government for $230 million for the judicial search warrant at Mar-a-Lago, which was perfectly lawful and was never struck down. But now he's suing the IRS for $10 billion. He's suing the IRS for $10 billion, which I think is around 80% of its annual budget, because his tax returns were leaked. And they were illegally leaked by a private contractor who actually is in prison now, Charles Littlejohn. But he wants $10 billion. Now, but I want to ask you the question of whether you think it would violate the Domestic Emoluments Clause for you to settle that $10 billion case or any of the other claims that the president has made against the government. He himself has remarked, it's interesting because I'm the one that makes the deal, right? And he says, I kind of have to work it out with myself. Do you think it would violate the Domestic Emoluments Clause for the president to work out a deal from people who are his subordinates under his unitary executive theory to get money in one of these cases?
I'm not going to discuss pending litigation.
Okay, so theoretically you're saying because his privacy rights were violated in that tax case, and they were. I'm with the president on that. I mean, his Mar-a-Lago thing is ridiculous, but there's no doubt that his tax returns, despite the fact that he promised to release them, despite the fact that every other president released the tax returns, he suffered embarrassment when it showed that he hadn't paid taxes for several years, and he had a right for that not to happen. Now, I want to turn back to the Epstein survivors, because President Trump may have been a little bit embarrassed by the release of those tax returns. How much do you think the claims of these survivors are worth? As the good congressman from Kentucky just pointed out, there were lots of survivors who had decided, for reasons of their own, never to release their names. That determination was represented to people in Congress, and we built it into our federal law that their names could not be released, and yet you published their names, their phone numbers, their addresses, personally identifying information. If Donald Trump can get $10 billion, theoretically, from the Department of Justice, how much should these people get for a far worse violation of their privacy rights and a far greater danger established to them in their lives?
Do you even know who Chase Mulligan is? You're so obsessed with, you don't, do you?
I'm going to teach you the rules again. You're the Attorney General of the United States. We have rules here.
You're obsessed with him.
You're the Attorney General of the United States.
You're obsessed with Donald Trump. You have Trump derangement syndrome.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like my time restored. I'd like my time restored.
In your district. In your district, and you don't even know about it, about keeping children safe from online predators.
Time belongs to the gentleman from Maryland. The gentleman can proceed.
Yeah, and I want the whole country to look at this, because this is the Attorney General of the United States, whose job is law enforcement. We've never had a witness who has misunderstood our rules and been unable to conform his or her conduct to our rules before. We have only 5 minutes, and so we use our time to ask you specific questions.
How long are you giving me to answer?
Excuse me, I'm not yielding to you right now. I'd like that second retort too. So, Ms. Bondi, the way it works is we ask you a question, and you answer it, and if you go off on a wild goose chase, another tangent, you start reading statistics, or you start talking about stuff going on in our district. And by the way, I invite you to my district. Come to my district, but that's not what we're here to do today, okay? So, and you do that, then we're allowed to say we reclaim our time. At that point, you have to be quiet. You have no choice. You have to be quiet. So I hope you understand the rule at this point. Now, here's what I want to ask you. You're in law enforcement. We've seen all kinds of evidence of crimes. And when we go over to the Department of Justice for the 4 computers for every member of Congress, we see more evidence of crimes. Will you create a joint task force of the Department of Justice and governors and state attorney generals and district attorneys across the country to investigate the crimes that have taken place against these victims and more than 1,000 like them? The DOJ is not doing its job. Will you create a task force with state and local law enforcement to make that happen?
Gentlelady can respond if she wants to.
Thank you, Chairman. He called Chase Mulligan a wild goose chase and didn't even know who he was. He is a defendant in your own district who preyed on girls.
Mr. Chairman.
Well, you know what? If he were part of the Epstein investigation, you wouldn't do anything about it.
Online chat rooms and committed sextortion. Yet he didn't even know in your tiny little district who he was.
Mr. Chairman, she's embarrassing you.
He's about to be
This is your committee, and she is embarrassing you.
Shame on you.
The time of the gentleman has expired. I would remind the committee that last Congress, Secretary Mayorkas was here numerous times, and he wouldn't answer our questions, even when we sent them to him ahead of time in writing. So that's what we've had to deal with. I think the Attorney General is doing just fine. We have votes shortly. I will go to the gentleman from Virginia, and then we will take a break to head to the floor.
I thank the chairman, Attorney General Bondi. Thank you for being here. And I wanted to thank you for your work at DOJ in restoring the rule of law, encouraging transparency surrounding Jack Smith's partisan investigations into President Trump, declassifying information about the Russia collusion hoax, cracking down on sanctuary jurisdictions, and establishing the National Fraud Enforcement Division. Let me first go to securing the border and immigration enforcement. Our new governor has recently rescinded 287G cooperation between the state and ICE. Can you talk about, have you evaluated the public safety impact, how that would affect safety in Virginia to withdraw that support and what that would do to criminal activity involving illegal immigrants in Virginia?
Yes, it would be detrimental. And as you know, Congressman, one of the top members of MS-13 in the entire country was living in Virginia, in a suburb, among all of us, living not even probably half an hour away from where we are now. And the cooperation previously with the governor, with the members of the state of Virginia, helped catch him and take him off our streets. An illegal MS-13, one of the heads for the entire country, was living in Virginia, and it's a shame that that's happening now, and thank you for talking about it, because we're going to keep America safe, and when people feel like they can flee to these cities and states and be safe, they can't, because Donald Trump is going to protect Americans. We're going to protect the citizens there, whether or not the governors, the mayors, are going to do it or not, but President Trump is. We're going to keep Americans safe from violent gang members like he's been doing this last year.
We appreciate that. We appreciate your work to make that happen in Virginia and keep Virginia safe. I want to move on to the Fraud Enforcement Division that you've established. My understanding is that this initiative is intended to centralize, coordinate enforcement of fraud laws related to government programs. You've talked about Minnesota, you've talked about California. Would this affect Virginia as well? Because we have fraud in Virginia as well.
Absolutely, and we look forward to working with you.
Would this affect things like long-term care accountability, senior living facilities engaged in Medicaid fraud, including systemic overbilling practices and the misappropriation of taxpayer-funded benefits?
That is exactly what it's set up to help.
Okay. I know that whether it was related to fraud specifically or another subject, that under the Biden administration, there was a sitting member of the Virginia General Assembly under investigation. Is that investigation still ongoing? Can you speak to that?
I can't discuss that.
Okay. I'm going to move on to the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding Americans. Last year, President Trump signed the One Big Beautiful Bill into law, which included the Hearing Protection Act, part of it that was sponsored by myself and Congressman Clyde. It reduced the national firearms tax, $200 tax on suppressors and short-barreled firearms, to zero. And while the tax has been eliminated, the NFA's registration and paperwork requirements remain in effect. And your DOJ has said that that would, even though the tax was reduced to zero, that the registration requirement is still somehow necessary, even though with regard to Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act, when that mandate was, when that tax penalty was reduced to zero, you decided that the mandate was no longer necessary. How are you justifying the existence of this registry?
Congressman, that's pending litigation right now.
It is, and I would hope
Yes,
you would
and I can't discuss it.
reconsider that. I yield back.
The gentleman yield?
I yield to the chairman.
I think that, Attorney General Bondi, why did Jack Smith have to pay some secret source $20,000 of taxpayer money? Do you know the answer to that?
I can't discuss anything on that matter, but that's a good question, Chairman Jordan.
Well said, it's a good question because he subpoenaed just about every Republican in this town, got half the Congress's phone numbers if you were a Republican. But he has to pay some secret source a bunch of taxpayer money. We'd like to know, the committee would like to know how many other sources he paid. Was it more than $20,000? Why he had to do those things? We'd like to know when you can, if you could get that information to the committee. I think when you think about the guy who was trying to put the President of the United States in prison, ridiculous as that whole thing was, we'd kind of like to know the answer to that if you could. And with that, we're going to stand in recess. We will go as quickly as we can and vote. We have 2 quick votes on the floor, and we will be back. There is actually some lunch if you all need it. We have for our members, and since you're back here, you can have some. We normally have plenty.
Mr. Chairman.
We'll take a recess.
Before you gavel out, can I ask for unanimous consent to enter to a record the article entitled Inside Trump's DOJ dated October 16, 2020?
Without objection, we stand in recess.
We're live on Capitol Hill, where Attorney General Pam Bondi is testifying on the priorities of the Justice Department, notably the Epstein investigation. This House Judiciary Committee hearing is currently in a break. When it resumes, we'll have live coverage here on C-SPAN 2. Right now, while this Judiciary Committee hearing is in a break, we're going to have live coverage here on C-SPAN 2 when they come back. But right now, here's an earlier portion of the hearing.
Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, so help you God?
I do.
Let the record show that the witness has answered in the affirmative. Thank you. You can be seated. And please know that your written testimony will be entered into the record in its entirety. Accordingly, we ask that you summarize your testimony. Madam Attorney General, you may begin.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Raskin, and distinguished members of this committee. Thank you for hosting me here today. I'm grateful for the opportunity to answer your questions, highlight the work of our department, and discuss the most important topic of all, keeping the American people safe. A little over a year ago, I was sworn into office as the 87th Attorney General of the United States. I came into office with the goal of refocusing the Department of Justice on its core mission after years of bloated bureaucracy and political weaponization. The Department of Justice's core mission is to fight violent crime, protect the American people, and defend the rule of law above all else. While our work is never done, we have made tremendous progress to make America safe again. In 2025, we saw the lowest murder rate in 125 years. That's nothing short of historic. If you compare 25 to 24, here's what you'll find. The murder rate is down 21%. Robbery down 23%, carjacking down 43%, gun assault down 22%, ag assault, burglary, could go on and on. Crime is declining. This did not happen by accident. The numbers tell an important yet straightforward story. President Trump has given us the resources, the support, and the leadership to protect the American people. President Trump's policies have saved lives. I cannot think of a policy outcome more important than protecting the lives of American citizens. Can you? This trend has been especially clear in Washington, D.C. and in Memphis. These are two iconic American cities that spent years in the grip of horrific violent crime. The Department of Justice surged law enforcement resources, and the results came quickly. Crime plummeted in both cities. And I want to make one point loud and clear. We achieved those results by working with Democratic mayors. Public safety does not have a party registration. When your constituents call 911, they don't ask for political views of the responding officer. They ask for help. I have federal agents in each and every one of your districts. They're here to help, and I am here to help. Many cities and states have worked with us and taken advantage of our federal support. Some have not. Meanwhile, a few elected officials have declared that they are, quote, at war with the federal government and encouraged widespread obstruction of law enforcement. This has resulted in avoidable clashes on the streets, as you've all seen. We've seen rioters storming a Christian church. Citizens and law enforcement officers have both been endangered by reckless rhetoric. We have made dozens of arrests in and around Minneapolis so far, and many of them could have been avoided by simple compliance with federal law. Of course, our efforts reach beyond our urban centers. We are striking crucial blows against terrorist organizations such as MS-13, TDA, the Sinaloa Cartel, and Antifa. And as we sit here, I think you've seen the news this morning. The news is reporting that cartel drones are being shot down by our military. That's what we all should care about right now, protecting America. As we seek to dismantle these drug trafficking networks that poison Americans, in 2025, our DEA agents seized more than 47 million fentanyl pills and more than 9,800 total kilos of fentanyl. That represents 369 million potentially deadly doses that can kill Americans. Meanwhile, our attorneys are fighting for President Trump's agenda in courtrooms across this country. This administration has been sued 627 times. We've fought through a nonstop flood of bad faith temporary restraining orders from liberal activist judges across this country. America has never seen this level of coordinated judicial opposition towards a presidential administration. It is not only an unlawful attack on the executive branch's authority, but a serious attack on the democratic process. In spite of this unprecedented judicial activism, we've attained 24 favorable rulings at the U.S. Supreme Court, their emergency docket, and even more to come. We've done so while ending the weaponization of the prior administration by dropping FACE Act prosecutions, exposing the Arctic Frost scandal via congressional disclosure, thank you, Chairman, and restoring one tier of justice in this country. To address the Epstein files, more than 500 attorneys and reviewers spent thousands of hours painstakingly reviewing millions of pages to comply with Congress's law. We've released more than 3 million pages, including 180,000 images, all to the public, while doing our very best in the time frame allotted by the legislation to protect victims. And if you brought us a victim's name that was inadvertently released, we immediately redacted it. All members of Congress, as you know, are invited to visit DOJ to see for yourselves. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the Epstein survivors who are here today. I'm a career prosecutor. And despite what the ranking member said, I have spent my entire career fighting for victims, and I will continue to do so. I am deeply sorry for what any victim has been through, especially as a result of that monster. If you have any information to share with law enforcement about anyone who has hurt you or abused you, the FBI is waiting to hear from you. I want you to know that any accusations of criminal wrongdoing will be taken seriously and investigated. The Department of Justice is committed to holding criminals accountable to the fullest extent of the law. In 2025, the FBI arrested over 1,700 child predators, a 10% increase from 2024. We also located 2,700 victims of child exploitation and shut down 3.8 million dark web pedophile accounts. 3.8 million. So please, if you have information to share that needs to be investigated, contact the FBI. Today, I look forward to discussing further our shared obligation to protect the American people, uphold the rule of law, and keep this nation safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Attorney General. The chair we now proceed under the 5-minute rule. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam General, thank you for your extensive remarks, particularly on your continued investigation of those responsible over the years in the Epstein debacle. Obviously, you have an amazingly full docket between civil rights, between criminal, between so-called white-collar crime, and doing so, as the chairman said, at a time in which both you and the president are under attack, and our ICE agents and FBI and others are under attack when they try to enforce the law. I personally want to apologize for those who would embolden, support, or even stand with those lawbreakers that sit on this and other daises here in Congress. My job generally is to talk about patents and trademarks as the chairman of that subcommittee. I'll forego that today because one of my other jobs is the creation and maintenance of Article III judges, and I work with the Chief Justice on that, and we're trying to expand the court. But currently, there are only 677 district court judges. They have very full dockets as well. But you create a tremendous amount of judges, particularly immigration judges. You do so in order to save the court that, but adjudicate, as is requirement, each of those people who claim a right to be here in the United States. And that has been going on under Republican and Democratic administrations for years. What's unique about the Trump administration this time is that you and President Trump have managed to reduce the backlog of people seeking that for the first time in decades. You are getting ahead of that tremendous backlog that caused, for better or worse, the release of millions of people with little pieces of paper saying, come back later when we call you, and often to no avail when you call. So I want to congratulate you on that because it's an accomplishment you might not take for, and the other side would never give you credit for. But I hope you can continue to do that and do more. And I say so for a reason, because much of this hearing will be about Minneapolis and other places in which the backlog of criminal aliens, including in my home state of California, people who have hurt other people, people who have victimized their communities, is extensive. And although the overall number through adjudication may be going on, because of places like my home state, California, you're unable to apprehend people that my sheriffs want apprehended. They desperately want to cooperate, and they're prohibited by law. It is this committee's opinion on this side of the aisle that, in fact, you should be given the ability to demand that participation, and that the release of a known criminal not be considered to be acceptable just because a state or city has declared itself a sanctuary. I want you to opine on just one thing that I think has been misunderstood. As I said earlier, you create and maintain those judges that adjudicate these cases. You also support so many that, in fact, have to make decisions as judges. Knowing that this limitation of so few Article III judges are there, please educate those who seem to miss the point that Article I judges, including bankruptcy judges, including immigration judges, including lots of people with the title appropriately judge, do in fact issue documents that look like, act like, and are normally accepted as warrants, as subpoenas, as demands for state officials to stand aside and allow the production of either an individual or documents. Because I think people are missing the point that these ICE retainers and detainers and so on, they act like they're nothing, when in fact, in the ordinary course, Madam General, you do in fact have Article I judges constantly putting those out, and they are respected normally.
Thank you, Congressman, for talking about all the great judges. And if I could add one thing to that, we are always recruiting and looking for judges. So please reach out to our office for these judges who are handling all these very important matters. We've even added some JAG officers as immigration judges.
Thank you.
And so we're continuing to do that, but we're always seeking qualified lawyers as well to be part of that. And thank you for highlighting that, Congressman.
Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Attorney General Bondi, right here. We are joined in this room by some of the thousands of survivors from Jeffrey Epstein's horrific sex trafficking ring. They have shown such incredible courage in speaking out, in demanding accountability to bring the predators and pedophiles to justice. The Epstein Files Transparency Act required your Department of Justice to disclose the perpetrators connected with Epstein's criminal activities and to redact the information of survivors to protect their identities. Let me show you what actually happened. First, in violation of the law, your department has shown a pattern of redacting the names of powerful predators. Here behind me is one example of an email from Epstein to a man whose name was redacted. The email reads, quote, "Where are you? Are you okay? I loved the torture video." Only after members of Congress demanded that we see the unredacted files did the world learn the name of this individual, Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, the chairman and CEO of a company that had financial ties to President Trump's business and personal ties to Trump's advisor, Steve Bannon. Second, the survivors were not similarly protected, also in violation of the law. Here is another email titled Epstein Victim List. We have blurred the names of the survivors for their protection, but your Department of Justice initially released this list of 32 survivors' names with only one name redacted, along with numerous files that disclose not only the names, the emails, and the addresses of survivors, but also nude photographs and even the identities of Jane Does who had been protected for decades until your department released their names. Survivors are now telling us that their families are finding out for the first time that they were trafficked by Epstein. In their words, quote, "This release does not provide closure. It feels like a deliberate attempt to intimidate survivors, punish those who came forward, and reinforce the same culture of secrecy that allowed Epstein's crimes to continue for decades." To the survivors in the room, if you are willing, please stand. And if you are willing, please raise your hands if you have still not been able to meet with this Department of Justice. Please know for the record that every single survivor has raised their hand. Attorney General Bondi, you apologized to the survivors in your opening statement for what they went through at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein. Will you turn to them now and apologize for what your Department of Justice has put them through with the absolutely unacceptable release of the Epstein files and their information?
Congresswoman, you sat before, Merrick Garland sat in this chair twice.
Attorney General Bondi,
No, can I finish my answer?
No, I'm going to reclaim my time because I asked you a specific question that I would like you to answer, which is, will you turn to the survivors? This is not about anybody that came before you. It is about you taking responsibility for your Department of Justice and the harm that it has done to the survivors who are standing right behind you and are waiting for you to turn to them and apologize for what your Department of Justice has done.
Members get to ask the questions, the witness gets to answer in the way they want to answer. The Attorney General can
That's
respond.
not accurate, Mr. Chairman.
Because she doesn't like the answer.
Time.
So,
Mr. Chairman,
why
I have asked
didn't she ask Merrick Garland this?
I am reclaiming my time, and when I
will
reclaim my
continue to
time,
answer.
it is
Mr. Chairman, the gentlelady's reclaimed her
I'm not going
time.
to get in the gutter for her theatrics.
The time belongs to the time belongs to the gentlelady. The gentlelady has 17 seconds.
Thank you. You're not going to answer this question, so let me just
Chairman,
say
I'll
this.
direct it to
What
you.
a massive
No, I'm
cover-up.
answering a
Mr.
question.
Chairman, will you restore her time? The witness is
I'm not going to get
interrupting.
in the gutter with this woman.
Stop the
She's
time
doing
and
theatrics.
let me have my time.
The gentlelady from Washington controls the time. The gentlelady has 17 seconds. You can proceed with your final 17 seconds.
What a massive cover-up this has been and continues to be. Donald Trump made the release of the Epstein files the center of his political campaign because he thought it would benefit him. Then you got into office, Attorney General, claimed to have a client list, only to then say that there was no list. Your deputy, Todd Blanche, met alone with Elaine Maxwell and transferred her to a minimum security prison. And now you continue the cover-up. And I wish that you would turn around to the survivors who are standing right behind you and on a human level,
Chairman,
apologize
The chair now recognizes the chair.
on what you have done.
Time of the gentlelady has expired. The gentlelady, you have no time to yield back. We appreciate that. We appreciate the thought. And I would argue the central issue in the last election, the presidential election, was securing the border. The gentleman from Arizona who knows something about securing the border is up for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Attorney General Bondi, for being here today. In 2022, Lafarge, which is a French cement company, pled guilty in U.S. federal court to participating in a criminal conspiracy with ISIS. That conspiracy contributed to the deaths of U.S. service members fighting in Syria during Operation Inherent Resolve. As part of the plea agreement, Lafarge was required to pay more than $775 million into DOJ's asset forfeiture fund. In February 2025, my colleagues and I sent you a letter urging the department to review the petitions for remission submitted by the families of those fallen service members, including several of my constituents. The previous administration ignored these victims and our requests and left their petitions unresolved. My question for you on this particular issue is if you're willing to work to ensure those families that their petitions will be reviewed and brought to a resolution.
Congressman, we are aware of that, and we're committed to doing everything we can to support the victims and work with you. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, appreciate your answer. And now let's go to something that is also pressing that I've been working on for years, and this is the FISA Section 702 and Arctic frost. In January 2025, you testified before the U.S. Senate and agreed with Senator Lee that, quote, anytime an American citizen's private communications are intercepted or stored, whether through incidental collection or otherwise, those communications should not be searched without some showing of probable cause. Close quote. You still hold that view today, I assume?
Yes.
And during the most recent FISA reauthorization, I offered an amendment to establish a clear warrant requirement for searches of Americans' data while preserving every publicly cited operational exception, including emergencies, defensive queries, cybersecurity threats. And my intent was to ensure the Department of Justice could continue to keep Americans safe while also ending warrantless searches of U.S. persons' data. Are there any additional circumstances or exceptions that you believe must be included to ensure DOJ can continue to operate effectively while still protecting American citizens' data and privacy?
Yeah, Congressman, we are committed to working with Congress to uncover weaponization and other misconduct by Jack Smith, by others, Arctic Frost, everything that happened under the past administration. And we are committed to working with you on that. And we are working with Chairman Jordan, with the House Intel, with all of our, my fellow cabinet members on resolving that issue.
Well, thank you, and I'm glad you brought up Arctic Frost, because Section 702 was used in the Arctic Frost investigation.
It was.
And information derived was used by Special Counsel Jack Smith. And my question has always been, and no one's been able to answer this, is what was the legal predicate for using a foreign intelligence authority in the Arctic Frost investigation? Have you been able to ascertain any legal predicate?
Congressman, what I can tell you today is that has been referred to my office. I can't discuss anything regarding that because it is very active and ongoing.
And you probably can't answer this one either, but I really want to know if Section 702 queries related to that matter involved members of Congress, which we know at some level it did, congressional staff, which we know at some level did. We've heard that journalists or other U.S. persons not suspecting of acting as foreign agents were also caught up in that. Can you answer that question and say whether queries did cover all those groups I just identified?
It is a very active pending investigation within my office. However, I believe many members of Congress have stated that their phones were part of Arctic Frost. We are well aware of that, and we are taking this very seriously, and this is a very active investigation. And I would keep going and say, if any member of the Democrat Party, if any of them, if that had happened to them, we would take that just as serious as we do. And they should be jumping up and down, screaming, supporting you and what you want to do, because this should be a bipartisan issue.
Well, I hope it is a bipartisan issue. You know, I'll just leave with these last couple of questions, which I'm sure fall into the same investigation privilege. But that's this: how many such queries were actually conducted overall? This is outside Arctic Frost in the prior year by the FBI or other intelligence community. And particularly, we really need to know what were the legal standards applied? Did they use probable cause? Did they use reasonable articulable suspicion? Or did they have no individualized suspicion and just were gathering up information? And that's beyond the investigation with regard to Arctic Frost. I don't expect you to have that information today, but if you can help get that information so we can understand the extensive nature of this continued misuse of 702, it would be very particularly helpful.
And it was extensive. Yes, Congressman. Thank you.
Time of the gentleman.